down and out, riddled with doubt, had nowhere to go. Everything's moving so slow, the time's moving too fast. I hope this feeling don't last. Well, I've been away from myself too long. My body is aching from all my wrongs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Whew. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
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 Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Deo, Deo.
Baby's got a burger and a shooter and that shake is won't go down. Baby's got a burger and a shooter and that shake is won't go down. Corrosion, corrosion to her thighs, erosion, erosion of her pride. Baby's got a shooter, baby's got, baby's got corrosion now, corrosion now. Baby's got it.
Baby's got it. Good morning. It is Tuesday. It's a 2 for Tuesday. Here at the rock station, it's a 2 for Tuesday. Actually, it's only one show, so no 2 for Tuesdays. But we got like 30-something shows, 30-something stories, probably, if we can get to them eventually. So, did you go to the No Kings thing? Did you go to the Virtue Signal Fest over the weekend? Some people, why you gotta be so bitter? Why do you have to be so sarcastic? Because I'm skeptical as hell of people. You gotta be these days, man. Don't look. It's like my old man used to say. He said, "Be a good person, but don't be a sucker." All right. I'm like, yeah, that's words to live by. Let's check in. All is quiet over on the Rumbly Tumblies. That's a little odd, but okay. Maybe we got our lurkers over there. They're lurking. They see me lurking, not commenting. They know they're gonna catch me wild and lurking. Gonna catch me wild and lurking. Gonna catch me wild and... All right. That's enough of that. Probably too much coffee too soon. Or maybe not. We got Willie Bragg in the house. What's up, Willie? Good to see you. Willie said, he said, I'm not diabetic, but I received a 2-month supply of free anti-diabetic medication worth over $2,000 yesterday at the doctor's office. Close to 40 pounds gone. I'll be skinny again after 30 more pounds. Willie, that's great. And yeah, like Kate said, skinny's good, but make sure you're being healthy. I know you are. You take care of yourself. I don't want you to be like some sort of little stick figure like, where'd Willie go? He disappeared. Congratulations, Willie. That's some awesome stuff. Kate in the house. Good morning, dear. I hope you're doing well. We got CBC voter. Good to see you, my friend. Laine P. What's up, Lady Petersen in the house? Going to be doing the Undercurrent about this time tomorrow. So make sure you tune in for that. Laine's been kicking it out of the park with the stories that she's been putting together. Good stuff. I highly recommend it. Not just because I'm on there. You should watch it despite me being on there. That's what I'm trying to say. Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show, Intergalactic, another dimension. Kicking it out in space. And we got We Are Ronin. Bum, 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 bum. Good to see you, my friend. And I think that's everybody right now. We're a little slow going here. Maybe some other stuff going on. That's fine. Time to make some money, because I like money. It's delicious when I rub it on my Nipsey Russells and go, oh, sweet cash. This chafing is well worth it. But we got to sell you some shitty coffee here. It's Desperation Blend Extra Dark Roast Ground Coffee, created in the metallurgical laboratories of the Count of Saint Germain. This secret to the fountain of death provides an invigorating ride to the emergency room, provided you live that long. Its original formula is unknown, though legend has it that an eye of newt and the tears of children are somehow involved in the mix. Are you tired of having money to spend? Have you ever been looking for a morning beverage that makes you question your own humanity and the existence of the universe itself? Well, then grab a bag of Desperation. It's Desperation Blend Extra Dark Roast Ground Coffee, found online and wherever Stephen Miller hides his adrenochrome stash. And remember, use promo code GRIFTER to pay an additional 20%. Because if you don't, how am I going to grift? Yeah. So, and that's the fake coffee thing. There is no Desperation Blend, by the way. That's part of the grift. You buy a coffee that doesn't exist. Which would probably be better than if that coffee did actually exist, which would probably be some sort of EPA hazard, and they'd have to fire it off in a rocket towards the sun. Nightstar Productions in the house. What's up, buddy? Good to see you, Jerry. Hope you're doing well this morning. We got a lot of news. A little special announcement about a show coming up on October 29th. We'll get to that in our propaganda watch because it's highly appropriate, I believe. But let's get to the bad news. That's why you're here. So, ceasefire. What does cease mean? Said Israel. As Israel continues deadly Gaza truce breaches, as the U.S. seeks to strengthen deal. The cucks that the U.S. are. Yeah. And the reason why their reason for violating the ceasefire is just so fucked up. Israel has continued its airstrikes and shootings in Gaza, raising fears over the future of its fragile ceasefire deal with Hamas as the United States envoys ramp up diplomacy to get the deal back on track. Maybe take away Israel's bombs. That might help. The Palestinian Civil Defense Agency said that 4 people were killed in 2 separate attacks, both times by Israeli gunfire as they were returning to check on their homes in the Al-Shaf area, east of Tuffa neighborhood in eastern Gaza City. Israeli military claimed it had fired at militants who crossed the so-called yellow line of demarcation and had approached troops in the Shujaya neighborhood, which is adjacent to Tuffa, and posed a threat, that's in air quotes, to Israeli soldiers. The yellow line set out in a map shared by Trumpy on October 4th is the boundary behind which Israeli troops pulled back and remained stationed under the ceasefire agreement with Hamas. Gaza City residents reported confusion over the line's location because of a lack of a visible boundary. Yeah, I know, right? No, you're supposed to squint, right? You're supposed to squint, or you use those sunglasses from They Live. That's how you can see it. The whole area is in ruins. We saw the maps, but we can't tell where those lines are, said Samir, who lives in Tuffa in the city's east. Several outbreaks of violence have taken place since a fragile U.S.-brokered ceasefire began on October 10th, with at least 97 Palestinians killed in total, and that number is rising, according to Gaza officials. Amid the rising death toll, Israel and Hamas have pointed the finger at one another for breaking the terms of the ceasefire, which took effect on October 10th. Israeli airstrikes on Sunday killed 42 people, including children. Of course, it always involves children. According to the local health officials, Israel said the strikes were in retaliation for a truce violation by Hamas fighters who claimed it shot and killed 2 Israeli soldiers in Rafah. Hamas denied involvement in the event, saying it has no contact with any of its remaining units in Israeli-controlled parts of Rafah and is not responsible for any accidents there. One official accused Israel of fabricating pretexts to resume the war. which is not unprecedented. The group, which has released 20 living Israeli captives, said it was working to complete the handover of the remaining bodies of captives in Gaza, citing major challenges because of the extensive destruction of the enclave. Right, everybody's buried under the rubble. The Red Cross received the body of a 13th deceased captive from Hamas on Monday and transferred it to the Israeli military, according to the office of the Nazi Fuhrer. I'm sorry, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I always get those two confused. On Sunday, Israel threatened to halt shipments of humanitarian aid into Gaza, though it later said it had resumed enforcing the ceasefire. United Nations spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said it's not delivery, it's Dujarric, said the delivery, see, it all ties together. That was a nice joke, sorry. Of aid into the territory had resumed, though he did not say how much. Al Jazeera's Tariq Abu Azum said yesterday that Israel was still blocking the entry of aid into Gaza. Several military checkpoints are blocking their entry, and these trucks are packed with various humanitarian supplies, he said. Abu Azum said the Israeli army had struck the eastern parts of Khan Yunis on Monday, triggering fears among Palestinians that the ceasefire would not hold. Philippe Lazzarini, the head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, said the fragile ceasefire in Gaza, hashtag Gaza, must be upheld in a statement on the tweeters, and called for investigations into the blatant breaches of international humanitarian law. Amid the continued violence, two of Trump's envoys traveled to Israel on Monday to shore up the ceasefire deal. Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, met with Bibi, according to an Israeli government spokesperson. Vice President J.D. Vance and the second lady, Usha Vance, are scheduled to visit Israel today and meet with Bibi. So if you're in Israel, bring your holy water if you want to get rid of some demons. The ceasefire's next stage is expected to focus on disarming Hamas, its Israeli withdrawal from the additional areas it controls in Gaza, and the future governance of the devastated territory under an internationally backed board of peace. Yeah, we told you about that on a few shows a few weeks ago. Egypt hosted talks in Cairo yesterday with senior Hamas official Khalil al-Hayya over ways to follow up on implementing the ceasefire, Hamas said in a statement. Hamas and other allied factions reject any foreign administrations of Gaza as envisioned by the Trump plan. They wanted to get, what's his name, the former prime minister of Britain in there. And like, no, don't put that idiot in there. And have so far resisted calls to lay down arms, which may complicate the implementation of the deal. Asked about maintaining the Israeli-Hamas ceasefire, Trumpy appeared to blame Hamas for the ceasefire breaches, of course, saying that it was facing some rebellion in its ranks, which the leaders needed to straighten out. They have to be good, and if they're not good, they're going to be eradicated, he said, but he insisted that such actions would not involve U.S. troops on the ground. Since the ceasefire started, Hamas security forces have returned to the streets in Gaza, clashing with other armed groups and killing alleged gangsters. Trump had last week said that Hamas had taken out a couple of gangs that were very bad, very, very bad gangs. They're very bad. They're very bad. I love gangs, but these gangs are very bad. They're very bad. And that didn't bother me much, but to be honest with you, that's okay. He said boopity boop, boopity boop, boop. Yeah, so I think we said this last time that when they called for the ceasefire, we were like, everybody's eyes rolled. They were like, yeah, right, this is going to happen. So how did it start? Why did it start back up again, right? So the U.S. government knew Hamas was not behind the Rafah blast, which was one of the reasons. Sorry, autopilot alert. The White House and Pentagon knew that the security incident in Rafah on Sunday, which killed at least 2 Israeli soldiers, was caused by an unexploded ordnance, not Hamas, according to Drop Site News and other reports. Ryan Grimm cited a familiar source as saying that the U.S. government knew that the incident was caused by an Israeli settler bulldozer running over unexploded ordnance, contradicting Netanyahu's claim that Hamas had popped up from the tunnels. What? He lied about that? I'm in shock. Pittsburgh Dude 87, what's up, Pittsburgh? Dude, why you let Joe Flacco beat you? I'm sorry. That's a tale for another day. Following the incident, the Israeli army launched a wave of artillery and airstrikes across Rafah, claiming to target several sites linked to armed groups, killing dozens of Palestinians. Grimm reported that after Netanyahu said he was blocking all aid from entering Gaza in response and unleashing a bombing campaign, the administration conveyed to Israel that they know what happened. So it's like he's going, yes, they popped out of the tunnels and went pop, 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 pop. Whisper, whisper, whisper. We know it's bullshit. We know it's bullshit. Netanyahu then announced he would reopen the crossings in a few hours. Grimm also cited Palestinian journalist Yunus Tirawi as saying that the incident in Rafah was not a Hamas attack, but rather a bulldozer operated by a settler company ran over some sort of explosive device or unexploded ordnance. Yeah, they bombed the fuck out of that place so much, of course there's going to be unexploded ordnance. Tony Blair, thank you, Pittsburgh. Yeah, that piece of shit. They want him to run Gaza. And people in Gaza are like, no. He said that by dropping countless megatons of bombs on Gaza, Israel has rendered it very dangerous terrain for its demolition crews. To accuse Hamas every time their demolition crew blows itself up, if a ceasefire violation, is the height of irony. The solution to this is to reach a genuine truce and remove the unexplored ordnance systematically. Journalist and executive director of the American Conservative magazine, Kurt Mills, also stated on Twitter that senior administration told him that Hamas did nothing. Israeli tank hit an unexploded IED that has probably been there for months. Yeah. Footage from the area has shown Israeli excavators destroying the remains of damaged buildings in Rafah, further supporting the claims. The Israeli army said 2 soldiers from the Nahal Brigade's 932nd Battalion were killed and 3 more injured in the incident that took place in southeastern Rafah, east of the so-called Yellow Line, which is under Israeli army control. Since the U.S.-backed ceasefire came into effect October 10th, the Israeli army has committed 80 ceasefire violations that we know of, killing at least 97 Palestinians, injuring 230 more, according to Gaza's government media office. Despite this, Trumpy insists that the ceasefire remains in place. Well, they're not actually throwing fire on there, so technically, it's like they stopped using fire. They went back. It was like they're before the cavemen. You know, they just stopped using fire, so they ceased it. We're gonna have to see what's happening. We want to make sure it's going to be very peaceful with Hamas. Trump told reporters when asked about Israel's latest attacks. This fucking constipated face. As you know, they've been quite rambunctious, he said, claiming that there may be some rebels within Hamas involved in ceasefire violations. They've been doing some shooting, and we think maybe the leadership isn't involved in that, but you know, some rebels within. But either way, it's going to be handled properly. It's going to be handled toughly, but properly. I know I sound like Trump on South Park, but that's the best Trump impression you're going to get. In a statement Sunday, Hamas affirmed that the movement has adhered to the implementation of the agreement with full, precise, and faithful commitment. Neither the mediators nor the guarantors have presented any evidence of proof that the movement has violated it or obstructed its implementation. Instead, Hamas has worked with all effort and sincerity to apply the agreement in letter and spirit to achieve stability and lift the suffering of our people in the Gaza Strip, the statement said. In contrast, the Israeli occupation authorities have deliberately violated the agreement since the first day the ceasefire came into effect and have committed numerous serious crimes and violations against civilians, it emphasized. Yeah, Cart Trumpman. Screw you guys, I'm going back to the White House. The movement said these violations have been documented and presented to the mediators, accompanied by photographs, lists, and conclusive evidence. And there are the numbers there, but those are very... I don't like to use those numbers anymore because of all the bodies that are under the rubble. There's thousands more that are unaccounted for. And speaking of unaccounted for, there are scores of Palestinians dead, regular arrests at Israel's as Israel ceasefire violations in Gaza so far. Let's look at them. Like, well, what did they do? Well, we're going to tell you right here. As Israel continues its attacks on Palestinians in Gaza, the viability of the U.S. brokered ceasefire is coming into question. Sunday, Israel unleashed a deadly wave of bombings on targets in the besieged territory after it alleged that Hamas violated the terms of the truce deal. Projection. The Israeli military said the attacks were in response to an alleged attack, as we told you about that, which with the 2 people killed. And they said which involved a rocket-propelled grenade and sniper fire, which didn't happen. However, the armed wing of Hamas, the Izz al-Din al-Qassam brigades, denied any knowledge of the event or connections to it and affirmed it remains committed to the ceasefire. So as we said, they've committed 80 violations of these of the ceasefire terms. In the 11 days since the truce, local Palestinian media has reported Israeli artillery fire, airstrikes, and even the arrest and detainment of civilians. Based on data collected by authorities in the besieged enclave, as well as local reports, Middle East Eye highlights some major Israeli breaches and the ceasefire agreement. So according to the agreement signed by Israel and Hamas, quote, all military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment and targeting operations, will be suspended. But in the Israeli version, there's a thing in parentheses, so you can't hear it. That's a Stephen Wright joke. That says, except for Israel. Despite the agreement, the government media office in Gaza reported that, like we said, over 97 people have been killed and 230 wounded. First of these violations started almost immediately after the truce came into effect. It's like they were sitting there going, okay, truce. At 10 a.m. local time on October 11th, shots were fired from Israeli vehicles stationed in Khan Yunis, killing 1 Palestinian. Several shots were reported later in the afternoon and evening of the same day as the army fired from military vehicles and quadcopters. The deadliest breaches of the truce occurred on Sunday with more than 100 airstrikes reported on Gaza. Bombardments were witnessed in Rafah and Khan Yunis in the south, Jabalia in the north, and parts of central Gaza. Among the sites hit were a cafe, a mobile phone charging station, a group of journalists, and a house sheltering displaced people. Yeah, that sounds like their target list. At least 24 Palestinians were killed in Israeli attacks on Sunday alone. And then there's the updated thing. So besides killings, Israel has also violated other aspects of the truce agreement. Despite an ongoing prisoner exchange, Israel has arrested and even detained Palestinians in Rafah, as well as dozens in the occupied West Bank. The Gaza media office noted that out of the 14 arrested in Gaza, 5 were released after being subjected to abuse by the Israelis. Hey, Yonina, good morning to you, dear. Hope you're doing well. 9 others were placed in handcuffs and kept captive by Israel. Israeli authorities released nearly 2,000 living Palestinians and 150 remains as part of its prisoner exchange deal. We'll tell you more about those 150 remains, too. At the same time, it has launched a campaign of arrests and detainment across the occupied West Bank and in Gaza's south. The Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza noted that some of the bodies of Palestinians received from the Israelis showed signs of severe torture and abuse. The remains of around 400 Palestinians are expected to be returned as part of the exchange. It never started. You know that. So, yeah, of course it's over. The media office recorded at least 4 instances of the Israeli army crossing over the agreed-upon withdrawal lines in the agreement text. It specified that the Israeli military will not return to areas it has withdrawn from. Instead, the army advanced into areas that it held no control over. These areas include neighborhoods in Khan Yunis and Rafah, south of Gaza, as well as Al-Sudaniya area, North Gaza, where Israeli tanks advanced towards Bianco Resort and targeted fishermen working within the permitted areas. Yes, fishermen, those... Why is it that people go after fishermen? Trump targets fishermen in the Gulf. They just want to fish, dude. Leave them alone. Israel has also placed restrictions on food aid life-saving essentials, and entry of building material into the devastated Palestinian territory in violation of ceasefire terms. As part of the first phase of Trumpy's 20-point bullshit ceasefire deal, Gaza's crossings were to be fully reopened on Monday to allow the entry of 400 aid trucks every day, with the number expected to rise to 600 in the following days, which they were supposed to be fully open at the time of the ceasefire. A Guardian report on Friday said less than half of the agreed-upon levels of aid were entering Gaza. However, rights groups have noted that Israeli authorities continue to restrict and limit the amount of aid entering the Strip. Over the weekend, Israel halted aid deliveries into Gaza in a major breach of the ceasefire agreement. Israeli media said the decision followed a military recommendation to suspend aid deliveries into the Gaza Strip until further notice for reasons. The government media office in Gaza described the aid entering over the last week as a drop in the ocean of needs, insufficient for over 2.4 million people, with the enclave requiring at least 600 trucks entering every day. So it's not just bombs. It's all this other stuff. You know what it's like? It's like you got two children, right? You've got like the spoiled brat child that the parents love the most, and then you have like the Cinderella type who's just like, we're doing what you told us to do, and they're like, well, you're not good enough. Why can't you be more like, yeah. And so this idiot Trump threatens Hamas with eradication if it doesn't behave. This is just the dumbest shit. Trump said yesterday that Hamas must behave in Gaza or the Palestinian group would be eradicated, echoing similar threats he has made since the ceasefire deal was signed. We made a deal with Hamas and they're going to be very good. They're going to behave. They're going to be nice. If not, we're going to eradicate them if we have to, the president told reporters at the White House. Trump suggested that Israel was eager to restart its genocidal war if he gave the word. Israel would go in 2 minutes. If I asked them, I could tell them go in and take care of it. But right now we haven't said that. We're gonna leave it a little chance. Give it a little chance. His comments came a day after Israel unleashed heavy airstrikes against Gaza, killing at least 45 Palestinians after claiming IDF troops came under attack in Rafah. So, as we've said, it was actually an unexploded ordnance. Discussing the alleged attacks on Sunday, Trump suggested that if it was a Hamas operation, it was not carried out under the direction of leadership. He made similar comments on Monday, saying, "I don't believe it was the leadership, but they have some rebellion in there among themselves." I can't talk today. Well, I can't talk as Trump today, apparently. While Trump has not addressed Israel's repeated attacks on Gaza, which have killed at least, close to 100 since the truce went into effect, he accused Hamas of being in violation of the ceasefire and warned it will be taken care of really quickly if Hamas does not straighten it out themselves. The U.S. has also been critical of Hamas's clashes with other armed groups and executions of alleged Israeli collaborators and criminals. Trumpy previously expressed support for the execution, saying they took out very bad gang members, but has threatened to go in and kill Hamas over the internal killings. So, finally, Israel is going to reopen the Gaza crossings under U.S. pressure. They probably just like, come on, let him have a little bit, Oh, okay, Trumpy, we will give him that. Fucking psychos. Israel's agreed to reopen crossings into the besieged Gaza Strip Monday morning following pressure from the U.S. after a decision to suspend the entry of humanitarian aid drew widespread criticism, according to Hebrew media reports. What's up, Wesley? Good to see you. Good morning, sir. I hope you're doing well. What else here? An American official told Channel 12 that Israeli authorities had pledged to reopen the crossings, though no further details were provided. They said, yes, we will open the crossings. Winky, 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 winky. Ow, I hurt my eye again. The reopening comes after Israel's political leadership announced the closure of all Gaza crossings and the suspension of aid deliveries in what Palestinian factions describe as a violation of the ceasefire agreement. Among others, a senior Israeli political source confirmed to Channel 12 that the closures had been approved at the highest level of government. According to Hebrew media, the Israeli military carried out extensive attacks across the Gaza Strip, striking 104 targets with 127 munitions and killing 15 people, including what it described as a company commander in Nubia. The move to reopen the crossings follows mounting U.S. diplomatic pressure on Israel to uphold commitments under the ceasefire agreement and allow the flow of humanitarian assistance into Gaza. It's kind of like that friend that likes to shoplift, and you always say, "Look, dude, you need to chill, right? They're watching you. Everybody's watching you." And he's like, "I don't give a fuck. I'm just gonna steal." And he's just protecting his friend because that's his friend, and his friend's probably got some shit on him from blackmail, that is. So about those bodies that they've released. So at least 135 mutilated bodies of Palestinians have been held at notorious Israeli jail, according to Gaza officials. At least 135 mutilated bodies of Palestinians returned by Israel to Gaza had been held in a notorious detention center, already facing allegations of torture and unlawful deaths in custody. Officials from Gaza's health ministry have told The Guardian, yes, pray for falling rocks. Space rocks, you're our only hope. The Director General of the Health Ministry, Dr. Munir al-Bursh, and a spokesperson for Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, where the bodies are being examined, said a document found inside each body bag indicated the bodies all came from Sidi Timan, a military base in the Negev Desert, where, according to photos and testimonies published by The Guardian last year, Palestinian detainees were held in cages, blindfolded and handcuffed, and shackled to the hospital beds and forced to wear nappies. What the fuck are nappies? I think that's the same place where they took the flotilla people. The document tags inside the body bags are written in Hebrew and clearly indicate that the remains were held at Sidi Timan. Bursh said the tags also show that DNA tests had been carried out on some of them there. Stephanie spoke in class today. What's up, girl? What's up, girl? Last year, the Israeli army launched a criminal investigation, which is continuing, into the deaths of 36 prisoners detained at Sidi Timan. Israel investigating itself. I'm sure that's going to turn up some evidence of wrongdoing. As far as the U.S. brokered truce in Gaza, Hamas has handed over the bodies of some of the hostages who died during the course of the war, and Israel has so far transferred the bodies of 150 Palestinians killed after the October 7th, 2023 attack. Some of the photographs of Palestinian bodies seen by The Guardian, that's where this is coming from, which cannot be published due to their graphic nature, shows several of the victims blindfolded, their hands tied behind their backs. One image shows a rope fastened around a man's neck. The diapers. Their diapers. Okay. Come on, just say diapers. Oh, well, this is The Guardian, so it's British, so they say nappies. Doctors in Khan Yunis said official examinations and field observations clearly indicate that Israel carried out acts of murder, summary executions, and systematic torture against many of the Palestinians. Health officials said the documented findings included clear signs of direct gunfire at point-blank range and bodies crushed beneath Israeli tank tracks. Dear God. Iyad Baroum, the administrative director of Nasser Medical Complex, said the bodies carried no names but just codes, and that part of the identification process had started. While there is substantial evidence that many of the returned Palestinians had been executed, it is much harder to determine where the victims were killed. Sidi Timan is a storage facility for bodies taken from Gaza, but it is also a prison camp that has become notorious for deaths in captivity. Human rights activists are demanding an investigation to find out whether any of the dead were killed there, and if so, how many. They're probably never going to get that information. The body of Mahmoud Ismail Shabat from northern Gaza bore marks of hanging around his neck, his legs crushed by tank tracks, which suggests he was killed or injured in Gaza and that his body was later taken to Sidi Timan. His brother Rami, who identified the body of his sibling by the scar from a previous head surgery, said what hurt us the most was that his hands were tied and his body was covered with clear signs of torture. Where is the world, said Shabbat's mother. All our hostages returned tortured and broken. Where is the world indeed? Some Palestinian doctors say the fact that many of the bodies were blindfolded and bound suggests they were tortured and then killed during their detention at Dearman, where, according to Israeli media reports and testimony from prison guard whistleblowers, Israel is holding nearly 1,500 bodies of Palestinians from Gaza. A whistleblower who spoke to The Guardian and who witnessed the conditions of detention at Dearman said, I did witness a patient from Gaza being brought with a gunshot wound to the left chest. He was also blindfolded and handcuffed naked as he arrived to the emergency department. Another patient with a right leg gunshot wound also arrived to my hospital in similar conditions. Another whistleblower has previously described how patients, all from Gaza, were handcuffed to the beds. They had all been dressed in nappies, diapers, and were blindfolded. He was told that some patients had come from hospitals in Gaza. These were patients who had been captured by the Israeli army while being treated in Gaza hospitals and brought here. They had limbs and infected wounds. They were moaning in pain. He claimed the military had no proof that detainees were all members of Hamas, with some inmates repeatedly asking why they were there. In one case, he said he learned that a detainee's hand had been amputated because his wrists had become gangrenous due to handcuffing wounds. Shadi Abu Saido, a Palestinian journalist from Gaza who works for Palestine Today, who was released after 20 months detention at Dearman and in another Israeli prison, said he had been seized by Israeli forces at Al-Shifa Hospital on March 18th of last year. They stripped me completely naked for 10 hours in the cold, he said in a video interview published on Instagram by the Turkish public broadcaster TRT. I was then transferred to Dearman, and they held there for 100 days, during which I remained handcuffed and blindfolded. Many died in detention, others lost their minds. Some had limbs amputated. They suffered sexual and physical abuse. Well, I would assume that's the same thing. They brought dogs that urinated on us. When I asked why I had been arrested, they answered, "We have killed all the journalists. They died once, but we brought you here and you will die hundreds of times." That is some evil shit, y'all. Yeah, Nazis are fucking bad, okay? And stop doing Nazi shit. They can't help themselves, y'all. Najee Abbas, the director of the Prisoners and Detainees Department at Physicians for Human Rights Israel, PHR, said the signs of torture and abuse found on the bodies of Palestinians recently returned by Israel to Gaza are horrifying, yet sadly not surprising. These findings corroborate what Physicians for Human Rights Israel has exposed over the past 2 years about conditions inside Israeli detention facilities, particularly at the Dearman camp, where Palestinians have been subjected to systematic torture and killings by soldiers and prison guards. PHR said the unprecedented number of Palestinians who have died in Israeli custody, together with verified evidence documented of deaths resulting from torture and medical neglect, and now the findings on the returned bodies, leave no doubt an independent international investigation is urgently needed to hold those responsible in Israel accountable. They're not even letting foreign press in there. Do you think they're going to let an independent, investigative body come in there? The Guardian submitted photographs of the bodies to an Israeli doctor who also witnessed the treatment of prisoners at the field hospital in Dearman on condition of anonymity. The physician said one of the pictures shows the man had his hands tied, likely with zip ties. There is a change in color between the arms and the hands at the level of the zip ties, likely indicating ischemic changes due to excessive restraints. He added this might be someone who was either injured and captured, thus died under Israeli custody, or someone who died due to injuries inflicted after his capture. Dr. Morris Tidball-Binns, a physician specializing in forensic science and a UN rapporteur, said A call should be made for independent and impartial forensic assistance to assist efforts to examine and identify the dead. Contacted regarding the allegations of torture, the Israeli Defense Forces said they had asked the Israeli Prison Service to investigate. The IPS did not respond to a request for comment and probably did not investigate. As for the alleged abuses at Dearman and the torture of prisoners, the IDF previously said it treated detainees appropriately and carefully, and that any allegations regarding misconduct by IDF soldiers is examined and dealt with accordingly. In appropriate cases, criminal investigations are opened by the military police. Winkety wink, 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 wink. I wish I had a third eye so I could wink that too. Wink, 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 wink. Asked about the claim Palestinian bodies had come from Dearman, the IDF said they are not commenting on this matter. Oh, well, you're all flowery and shit up here, but you get down here. Oh, no comment. I don't remember. I don't have that information. At least 75 Palestinian detainees have died in Israeli jails since October 7th, 2023. And I think that number has jumped to 80 now, too. So it's not just Hamas that's getting poked like a bear. Of course, Lebanon's always in the mix as Barak threatens major Israeli war if Lebanon fails to disarm Hezbollah. U.S. Ambassador to Turkey, Tom Barak, is once again threatening Lebanon with war, this time from Israel. If they fail to meet U.S. demands to fully disarm Hezbollah, he suggested that even hesitation would inevitably lead to a major war with Israel and dire consequences. But Israel bombing the fuck out of Lebanon, that's totally fine. This isn't the first time Barak has threatened Lebanon with war. Back in July, he suggested that both Israel and Syria would conquer them outright and annex Lebanon if they didn't give in, later threatening to withdraw the Lebanon file from U.S. diplomatic priorities entirely. He gave Lebanon a 90-day deadline to disarm Hezbollah and claimed Israel made up that deadline. Underpinning the threat of an Israeli attack on Lebanon is that Israel is already actively attacking Lebanon on a virtually daily basis. They violated that ceasefire too, and indeed has been since the ceasefire was signed in November of last year. At least 3 strikes were reported Monday. Look at this Lex Luthor looking motherfucker. This guy, this piece of shit. In recent days, the attacks are increasingly focused on preventing southern Lebanon from repairing damage inflicted on it by Israeli strikes in last year's war and this year's ceasefire being in quotes, scare quotes. This has included attacking construction vehicles and a major asphalt factory because, Hezbollah. The incentive for disarming Hezbollah isn't apparent either, as last month Barak declared in an interview that peace is an illusion and there would probably always be war in the area. Though Israel has threatened to escalate attacks on Lebanon, they are constantly doing so irrespective of the Lebanese government's actions. So presenting capitulation as an incentive is probably a major challenge. Hezbollah has rejected the idea of disarming so long as Israel is occupying Lebanese soil and is attacking Lebanese villages. Israel has not formally committed to actually ending the occupation in return for the disarmament, and even if it had, it committed to withdraw in last year's ceasefire and ultimately never did, with the U.S. shrugging and never holding them to account. Shrugging. Yeah, this guy going, oh, what can I do? We're only the most powerful nation ever lived. Fucking psychos, man. I don't know if it's conscience or they know that shit's coming, but people are fleeing Israel left and right. Record number of Israelis leaving and not returning since 2020, Knesset report says. They came there for the desert air, but they didn't come for the genocide. So now they're leaving. Record number of Israelis have left the country since 2020, with policymakers enjoying little success in stemming the outflow over the past 5 years. Peace stuff. What's up? Taco Tuesday. A report released by Israeli parliament, the Knesset has alarmed politicians who fear the impact of a declining Jewish population in the state. There's always a big joke, because I used to live in New York, in Brooklyn, and it was said that there's more Jews in Brooklyn than there is in Israel, and that's probably the case. The Knesset's Research and Information Center, RIC, has said between 2020 and 2024, some 145,900 more Israelis left the country for long-term than returned. In 2020, 34,000 Israelis left the country for extended periods, followed by 43,400 in 2021, while 32,500 and 23,600 returned in those respective years. There was a sharp jump in long-term departures in 2022 and 23, with 59,400 Israelis leaving in 22 and 82,800 in 23, a surge partly linked to the start of the Gaza war in October that year. Since 2020. Yeah, that is funny, isn't it? Funny how that... What else happened in 2020? Do you guys remember? According to the report, residents of Tel Aviv accounted for 14% of all Israelis who left in 2024, followed by Haifa at 7.7%, Netanya 6.9%, and Jerusalem at 6.3%. Gee, I wonder why the Israelis left Tel Aviv. They're like, oh shit, they're starting to bomb us. Gotta go. The report was prepared for a session of the Knesset Committee for Immigration, Absorption, and Diaspora Affairs that was due to take place yesterday. Committee Chair MP Gilad Kariv described the numbers leaving as a tsunami. Many Israelis are choosing to build their fortune outside the state of Israel, and fewer choose to return. This phenomenon threatens the resilience of Israeli society and must be seen as a real strategic threat, he said, according to Ynet. When talking to someone from Gaza, they said, good, get the fuck out. Take your friends with you. This is not fate, but the result of government actions that fractured Israeli society before the war and neglected the civilian front over the past 2 years. Kariv added that it was still possible to stem the flow, but that doing so would require urgent intervention from Bibi, and you know what kind of an asshole he is. We can reduce this phenomenon, but the current government's priorities are entirely different, which will only intensify the worrying trend, he said. These priorities are no less than trampling on Zionist values and the future of Israeli society. Aw. Too bad, so sad. And we told you on shows way back that their economy, they're basically being propped up by the United States. If the United States totally cut off Israel, that'd be it. They'd probably collapse as a country. Germany and their guilty conscience about World War II has bled over into even today. But these aren't the Jews you remember from back then. These guys are assholes. But a case filed at Germany's top court to challenge arms exports to Israel. This guy's tall. A group of Palestinians have filed a complaint at Germany's Federal Constitutional Court challenging the country's arms exports to Israel, their lawyers announced yesterday. 5 plaintiffs from Gaza brought the case with support from Palestinian and German rights groups. The European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights, ECCHR, or ECHR, announced in a statement, the constitutional complaint is directed against German export licenses for tank transmissions manufactured by the company Renk. Tanks in which these transmissions are installed are being used extensively in Gaza, including in ways that violate international law and harm the civilian population, the ECHR stated. Palisi. The ECHR, together with the Palestinian human rights organizations, the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, that's the PCHR in Gaza, Al-Mazan Center for Human Rights in Gaza and Al-Haq Human Rights Organization in Ramallah is supporting the complaint. As long as the German government approves arms deliveries to Israel that can be used in Gaza, it's violating its constitutional duties of protection and international law, experts said in a statement. The German government must fulfill its responsibility. No arms exports to Israel while there is a risk of systematic violations of international law, they stressed. In addition, they called for the lifting of the Israeli blockade on humanitarian assistance and the enabling of independent international investigations in Gaza under UN mandate. The complaint follows previous legal challenges at local and regional courts that were rejected over the past 2 years. The plaintiffs invoke their fundamental right to life and physical safety under Germany's basic law, as well as their right to effective legal protection. Chancellor Friedrich Merz coalition government announced in August that it would halt approval of new weapons exports that could be used in Gaza amid growing international and domestic pressure. However, the government did not commit to stopping deliveries of weapons already approved. So they'll say, well, tell you some bullshit, but we're not really going to do it. We're not going to do it. We travel over to Syria now, as Israeli troops harass civilians at checkpoints in southern Syria. So this was, Israeli troops continue to operate in the southwestern Quneitra governorate of Syria, establishing yet another checkpoint and harassing civilians on the road connecting Jabada al-Khashab and Afania, preventing some of them from continuing on their way. Though details are still emerging, some reports indicated that the Israeli troops, backed by tanks and armored vehicles, were intimidating locals and in some cases even assaulted some of them. No arrests were confirmed, however. The northern countryside around Jabal al-Khashab seems to be an increasing focus for invading Israeli forces, who, while not occupying the populated areas outright, are routinely raiding homes to search them and set up checkpoints intermittently. In addition to this weekend's checkpoint, Israeli troops also fired flare grenades at the southern part of the outskirts of Jabal al-Khashab. The IDF did not issue any statements related to the increasing operations in that area, which is in the northern part of Quneitra. Part of this seems to be a focus on the forested nature reserve near the town of Jabal al-Khashab, as Israeli military bulldozers are routinely entering that area and knocking down trees. Over 100 dunams of trees, approximately 25 acres, have been destroyed so far. And I thought I saw a story yesterday that said out of Gaza's 1.2 million olive trees. That doesn't sound right, but they have a lot of trees, but like 1 million of them, taking them out. So they have like 200,000 left or something like that. I'm not sure of the numbers, so don't quote me on that. But it was just like the vast majority of olive trees have been just eradicated. Elsewhere in the governorate, Israeli troops raided the village of Saida al-Hanut, setting up a barrier at the village entrance and then entering, although they reportedly left shortly thereafter. And again, it was not clear why they were there. So Israel's just fucking with everybody around there. Hamas or Hezbollah. It's and violating the ceasefire, which all of you, I'm sure, said, ceasefire, really? You know it was bullshit. All of this is bullshit. So, apparently there wasn't a full withdrawal from Iraq by U.S. forces, as the U.S. cancels withdrawal from major Iraqi base. This is from Kyle Enzalone from the Libertarian Institute, and a lot of antiwar.com stories today too. Shout out to those guys. The U.S. will not move forward with its plan to leave the Ain al-Assad air base in Iraq President Joe Biden agreed to withdraw U.S. forces from Iraq in September 2024. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani announced yesterday that between 250 and 350 American troops will remain at the base. He claimed they would help Baghdad fight the Islamic State, which is funny because the troops' bosses created the Islamic State. These personnel will assist in surveillance and coordination with U.S. forces at the Al-Tanf base in Syria to ensure that IS or ISIS does not exploit the security vacuum, he explained. In 24, Joe Biden agreed to draw down U.S. forces in Iraq after pressure from Baghdad. The demand of an American withdrawal intensified after the U.S. bombed Shia militia forces in Iraq. Tensions between the Shia militias in Iraq escalated throughout the first half of 2024. Rockets were fired at bases housing U.S. soldiers in Iraq and Syria because of U.S. support for the Israeli genocide in Gaza. An attack on the Tower 22 base in Jordan killed 3 American soldiers. Additionally, 5 U.S. soldiers were wounded in a rocket attack on the Ain al-Assad air base. The agreement called for a complete withdrawal of the 2,500 American soldiers in Iraq. Earlier this month, the Department of Defense, I'm not calling it the Department of War, that's just so fucking stupid, said that it would only undergo a minor withdrawal to under 2,000 troops. The U.S. has continued to bomb Iraq, claiming that it is targeting ISIS. However, last year, a Biden administration official said ISIS had been severely defeated. ISIS has definitely been severely defeated, certainly territorially defeated, and we want to ensure the enduring defeat of ISIS, but the threat does remain, they said. Al-Sudani downplayed the threat posed by ISIS in Iraq after he announced the U.S. troops were staying to fight the group. He stressed that ISIS no longer poses a significant threat inside Iraq. So it's like, get the fuck out. Get out! Meanwhile, Iraq says it will not allow using its land airspace to threaten Iran and its neighbors. Iraq said yesterday it will not allow any use of Iraqi territory or airspace to threaten Iran or any neighboring country. Iraq will not in any way permit the use of its land or airspace to threaten Iran or any neighboring country, the state news agency INA quoted National Security Advisor Qasim al-Araji as saying during a joint press conference in Tehran with Ali Larijani, Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. Baghdad remains fully committed to the security agreement signed with Tehran, he said. In August, Iraq and Iran signed a memorandum of understanding to enhance security coordination along their shared border. Which is funny, like almost 50 years ago, these guys had a war. The Iraqi government is working to consolidate regional stability and prevent any escalation or tension that could threaten regional security, added Araji, who arrived in the Iranian capital early yesterday. He noted that Iraq has filed an official complaint against Israel to the UN Security Council. Israel launched a surprise attack on Tehran back in June, targeting military, nuclear, and civilian sites, as well as senior military commanders and nuclear scientists. At the time, Iraq said that it had submitted a formal complaint to the UN Security Council condemning Israel's violation of Iraqi airspace during the attack against Iran. Araji said that that Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani had reaffirmed Iraq's rejection of any use of Iraqi airspace to launch attacks against Iran in meetings with several world leaders. Larijani, for his part, said his discussions with the Iraqi National Security Advisor took up several security issues. But the main focus of our talks was expanding economic relations between the two countries, he said. If we want our economic relations to remain stable, we must also strengthen our security cooperation. Iraq is starting to come up, after Saddam Hussein was taken out and basically the United States just gutted the governmental infrastructure. I think they got rid of the army. They got rid of the military. They got rid of everybody in the government, and they hired all these puppets, and then it was just shit for years and years. Meanwhile, Russia prepared to expand cooperation with Iran in all areas. Game.film, what's up? Good to see you, buddy. I hope you're doing well. So, Russia announced yesterday that it's ready to deepen cooperation with Iran in all areas, according to Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, who described bilateral relations as developing very dynamically. Speaking to the reporters in Moscow, Peskov said Russia views Iran as a partner, well, they are in BRICS together, and criticized what he called excessive pressure from European states over Tehran's nuclear program. He added that the situation surrounding negotiations remains very complicated. The statement came as a senior Russian envoy arrived in Tehran for a meeting with Iran's Supreme National Security Council Secretary Ali Larijani later that day. Well, Larijani's a busy man. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai said earlier that the meeting is part of the regular coordination between Moscow and Tehran, describing it as cooperation and consultations between the two countries in various fields. The visit comes after Larijani's trip to Moscow last week, where he handed a message from Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei to Russian President Vladimir Putin and held wide-ranging talks on strengthening economic ties, advancing bilateral cooperation, and addressing regional developments. Both nations, subjected to extensive Western sanctions, have deepened their partnership across defense and energy fields. In recent months, Moscow and Tehran have signed a number of major agreements, including a strategic partnership deal between Putin and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, and a $25 billion contract between Russia's state nuclear firm Rosatom and Iran to build 4 nuclear power plants aimed at easing Iran's chronic electricity shortages. Moscow has also supplied Tehran with military equipment under what it emphasizes are lawful agreements, while the Islamic Republic has provided Russia with drones for deployment in Ukraine. Earlier this year, Russia condemned U.S. and Israeli airstrikes targeting Iranian nuclear facilities, which Washington and Tel Aviv claimed were aimed at preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, which Iran stresses was never their intention to begin with. As the latest meeting between Putin's envoy and Larijani takes place, Moscow's declaration marks another step in the expanding partnership between the two sanctioned states, reflecting what both sides describe as growing coordination on regional and international issues. There we go. When I say issues, you work button. Okay. So meanwhile, Iran, China, and Russia send a letter to the UN to mark official end of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. So on Saturday, Iran, Russia, and China sent a letter to the UN Security Council declaring that the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, known as the JCPOA, has officially expired. The official termination of the JCPOA comes 7 years after the U.S. unilaterally quit the deal during the first Trumpy administration in 2018. In the letter, I think that's an REO Speedwagon song. In the letter, the three countries condemned France, the UK, and Germany, known as the E3, for triggering the snapback mechanism of the JCPOA, which reimposed UN Security Council sanctions that were lifted back in 2015. Russia and China's opposition to the move signals they will not follow the sanctions, which includes an arms embargo. The attempt by the E3 to trigger the so-called snapback is by default legally and procedurally flawed, Iran, Russia, and China said, adding that the E3 ceased to perform their commitments under the JCPOA and UN Security Council Resolution 2231, which endorsed the agreement and created the snapback mechanism itself. The ability to snap back the sanctions would have expired with the JCPOA, which is why the E3 countries ensured that they were reimposed beforehand, a step they likely took at the behest of the U.S., because they are the U.S.'s bitches. The sanctions came just a few months after the 12-day U.S.-Israeli war against Iran, which involved the U.S. bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities. You guys aren't commenting. Are you engrossed in this? I hope I'm not putting you to sleep. Iran, Russia, and China told the Security Council that the end of the JCPOA and the conclusions of Resolution 2231 marks the end of the Security Council's consideration of the Iranian nuclear issue and contributes to strengthening the authority of the Council and the credibility of multilateral diplomacy. Iran's foreign ministry also released a statement that said all of the provisions of the deal, including the restrictions on the Iranian nuclear program and the related mechanisms, are considered terminated. The foreign ministry reiterated that Tehran was still open to diplomacy over its nuclear program, though any diplomatic progress with the U.S. is unlikely due to Trumpy's demands. Iran remains a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and its leadership has reaffirmed in recent months that Tehran is not seeking nuclear weapons and is still bound by Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei's fatwa that prohibits the development of nuclear weapons. Israel, which is always accusing Iran of moving towards nuclear weapons, even though they have a nuclear weapon themselves and don't tell anybody about, is not a signatory to the NPT and has a secret nuclear weapons stockpile, making it the only nuclear-armed country in the Middle East that's not being, in the Middle East, period, and they don't have inspectors coming in there, too, because it's Israel, You lurking, Stephanie? That's fine. Hope World War III doesn't happen. I don't know, man. You can always pray for Skyrocks. Skyrocks in sight. Pew! Afternoon delight. Meanwhile, the UN, cucky as usual, moves to ban Russian energy imports by 2028. European Union states have agreed to halt Russian oil and gas imports by 2028, severing an energy link they fear helps fuel Moscow's war in Ukraine. That don't make any sense. Almost all EU energy ministers voted in favor of the draft regulation, which applies to both pipeline oil and liquefied natural gas, that's LNG, during a meeting in Luxembourg yesterday. It would require EU members to phase out new Russian gas import contracts from January 2026, existing short-term contracts from June 2026, and long-term contracts in January 2028. The proposal must now be approved by the European Parliament, where it is expected to pass. Bootsy Collins always abstains. The plan is part of a broader EU strategy to curb Russian energy dependence amid the war in Ukraine and follows persistent calls by U.S. President and game show clown Trumpy for European states to stop funding the war against themselves. Lars Agard, that's a lot of A's. That dude got 4 A's in his last name. He's got a GRD and 4 A's. Lars Agard, Denmark's energy minister, called the proposal a crucial step to make Europe energy independent. Although we have worked hard and pushed to get Russian gas and oil out of Europe in recent years, we are not there yet, Agard said. His country recently holds the EU's rotating presidency. The EU has already brought down Russian oil imports to just 3% of its overall share, but Russian gas still makes up 13% of gas imports, accounting for more than 15 billion euros, or about 17.5 billion smackaroos annually, according to the European Council. Nevertheless, these purchases make up a relatively small portion of Russia's overall fossil fuel exports, which most likely go to China, India, and Turkey, according to the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air. The EU countries importing the most Russian energy are Hungary and Slovakia, followed by France, the Netherlands, and Belgium. Hungary and Slovakia, which are diplomatically closer to Moscow, both opposed the latest EU initiative, but it only needed a weighted majority of 15 states to pass, meaning they could not block it. I know, I keep wanting to say Asgard. Asgard. The real impact of this regulation is that our safe supply of energy in Hungary is going to be killed. Budapest's top diplomat Peter Szijjártó was quoted as saying by the AFP news agency. The text approved on Monday allowed specific flexibilities for landlocked member states, which include Hungary and Slovakia. In addition to the trade restrictions, the EU is negotiating a new package of sanctions against Russia that would ban LNG imports 1 year earlier from January 2027. The EU's High Representative, he's high, for Foreign Affairs, she is, Kaja Kallas, Kaja Kallas, hush, hush, I. Sorry, that was Kaja Gugu. Said earlier on Monday, the new sanctions package could be approved as early as this week. Yeah, so EU, as a friend of mine says, sticking their dicks in the light socket. And they're like, we don't need heat this winter. Or next winter. Come on, y'all. Meanwhile, in France, they recently had Sarkozy, their former president. He's in jail. And now a French bank has been found complicit in genocide, but not the one you think. There's another genocide, and it's in Sudan. A U.S. federal jury has found French banking giant BNP Paribas liable for aiding genocide in Sudan, ruling that its operations strengthened the government in a conflict that killed thousands and displaced millions in the African country. The verdict in Manhattan Friday followed years of litigation over the bank processing transactions in violation of U.S. sanctions on Sudan. The civil case was filed in 2016 on behalf of Sudanese refugees living in the U.S. At the trial, the plaintiffs presented evidence that BNP Paribas moved billions through the U.S. financial system for Sudanese state entities between 2002 and 2008, enabling the regime of former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, to preserve oil revenues and import supplies of security forces, or as security forces and allied militias waged a campaign of mass violence. The case centered on Darfur, where beginning in 2003, government forces and Janjaweed militias targeted non-Arab communities. More than 300,000 people were killed and about 2.5 million were displaced during the conflict, UN estimates show. The court has ordered BNP Paribas to pay a total of $20.45 million in damages to 3 Sudanese-born plaintiffs. This verdict is a victory for justice and accountability. Our clients lost everything to a campaign of destruction fueled by U.S. dollars that BNP Paribas facilitated and that should have been stopped. Bobby DiCello, a lawyer for the plaintiff, said. A spokesperson for BNP Paribas, Europe's second largest bank, reportedly rejected the verdict, arguing Sudan had alternative funding sources and the bank's conduct did not directly enable abuses. This result is clearly wrong, and there are very strong grounds to appeal the verdict, which is based on a distortion of controlling Swiss law and ignores important evidence the bank was not permitted to introduce, the spokesman said, according to Reuters. The bank had previously pled guilty in the U.S. in 2014 to criminal charges for processing transactions for Sudan, Iran, and Cuba in violation of sanctions and paid about $8.97 billion in penalties. The verdict comes amid a brutal war between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, which jointly ousted Bashir in a 2019 coup and led to a fragile transitional government before fracturing in April of 2023. So, meanwhile, we go down under as U.S. and Australia sign a rare earth mineral agreement as China tightens their supply. So these rare earth minerals, growing up, they said when I would be an adult, there would be wars for like food and water and stuff like that. Now they're going to have wars for these rare earth minerals. Trumpy and Australian Prime Minister puppet Anthony Albanese have signed an agreement on rare earth and critical minerals as China tightens control over global supply. The two leaders signed the deal on Monday at the White House. Trump said the agreement had been negotiated over 4 or 5 months. The two leaders will also discuss trade, submarines, and military equipment, Trump said. Albanese described it as an $8.5 billion pipeline that we have ready to go. A copy of the agreement provided by the Prime Minister's office said the two countries will each invest $1 billion over the next 6 months into mining and processing projects. They also set a minimum price floor for critical minerals, a move that Western miners have long sought. China has the world's largest rare earths reserves, according to the U.S. Geological Survey data, but Australia also has significant reserves as well. The two leaders also plan to discuss the $239.4 billion agreement reached in 2023 under then-President Joe Biden, in which Australia is to buy U.S. nuclear-powered submarines in 2032 before building a new submarine class with Britain. U.S. Navy Secretary John Phelan, Phelan? What? Feeling that way, ooh, anytime that you want me. Told the meeting the U.S. and Australia were working very close to improve the original framework for all three parties and clarify some of the ambiguity that was in the prior agreement. Trump said these were just minor details. There shouldn't be any more clarifications because we're just now full steam ahead building, Trump said. I didn't want to do the voice. That thing. Australian officials have said they are confident it will proceed, with Defense Minister Richard Marles last week saying he knew when the review would conclude. So ahead of Monday's meeting between the two leaders, Australian officials emphasized Canberra is paying its way under AUKUS, and a trilateral military partnership between the U.S., Australia, and the U.K., contributing $2 billion this year to boost production rates at U.S. submarine shipyards and preparing to maintain U.S. Virginia-class submarines at its Indian Ocean naval base from 2027. The delay of 10 months in an official meeting since Trump took office has caused some anxiety in Australia as the Pentagon urged Canberra to lift defense spending. The two leaders met briefly on the sidelines at the UN General Assembly in New York last month. Australia is willing to sell shares in its planned strategic reserve of critical minerals to allies, including Britain, as Western governments scramble to end their reliance on China for rare earths and minor metals. Top U.S. officials last week condemned Beijing's expansion of rare earth export controls as a threat to global supply chains. China is the world's biggest producer of the materials, which are vital for products ranging from electric vehicles to aircraft engines and military radars. Resource-rich Australia, wanting to extract and process rare earths, put preferential access to its strategic reserve on the table in U.S. trade negotiations in April. Right? So I don't think back in the 80s they thought that rare earths was going to be a thing. Right. I think they were the resources, like I said, food, water, land, were going to be the wars that they're fighting over. And it looks like it's going to be over these minerals. Meanwhile, you have data centers in the United States that's driving up your electric bill. Those are nice. You like those, don't you? Back here at home, they're not going yet, but they got approved. Oh, look at that. Good catch. Good catch. Yeah, you like that? I like to slip those in there, see if anybody recognizes them. So I guess troops have been approved to go to Oregon. Well, U.S. court says Trump can command Oregon troops, but deployment is still on hold. U.S. Court of Appeals has ruled that the administration of Trumpy can move forward with plans to deploy soldiers to Portland, Oregon, although another earlier ruling still bars it from doing so for now. The Monday ruling by the Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit will allow the Trump administration to send 200 National Guard members to the Democrat-run city, despite the absence of any serious emergency and the objections of the state and local officials. Maybe they'll send those fat guys from Texas again, huh? You hear that? They had to recall some of those troops from Texas. They're too out of shape. Instead of protecting ice, they were protecting icing on the donuts at the local at the local Dunkin' Donuts. Sorry. It comes after Trumpy's Department of Justice appealed the first two rulings from U.S. District Judge Karen Immergut, prohibiting Trump from calling up the troops so he could send them to Portland. I'm pretty sure he was basically saying, hey, she's a fucking Karen. I tell you, she's a Karen. She's a Karen. After considering the record at this preliminary stage, we conclude that it's likely that the president lawfully exercised his statutory authority when he federalized the state's National Guard. The Court of Appeals wrote in its majority opinion, supported by 2 judges out of a panel of 3. And, of course, the 2 judges were Trump appointees. Another temporary restraining order which prohibits the president from sending any National Guard members to Oregon at all, and which was issued by Immergut after Trump tried to evade the first order by deploying California troops instead, remains in place. Soon after the ruling on Monday, the Justice Department asked Immergut to immediately dissolve her second order, arguing that it is not the role of the courts to second-guess the president's determination about when to deploy troops. Well, when to deploy troops on U.S. soil, abso-fucking-lutely. Yeah, abso-fucking-lutely. That's, yeah. A second guess, third guess, fourth guess. Oh, you know all this. Good. That's probably why you're here. You're probably not here for the news. You're probably here for the song or everything. Hey, look, man, whatever I can provide for you to make you happy, I'm here. So, Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield, a Democrat, said he would ask for a broader panel of the appeals court to reconsider Monday's decision. Today's ruling, if allowed to stand, would give the president unilateral power to put Oregon soldiers on our streets with almost no justification, Rayfield said. We are on a dangerous path in America. Yeah, when you start seeing troops on the streets, yeah, that's game over. You know you're in a shit pickle. The Trump administration has deployed armed forces to Democrat-run cities across the country, along with aggressive immigration raids in which heavily armed federal agents wearing masks have pulled people off the streets, demanding that they prove their legal status. Many U.S. citizens have also been swept up in those raids, during which civil liberty groups have accused immigration agents of operating based on racial profiling and detaining people without cause. The ACLU expressed disappointment in the court's decision. As the founders emphasized, domestic deployment of troops should be reserved for rare extreme emergencies as a last resort, but that is far from what the Trump administration is doing in Portland, Chicago, LA, and D.C. Hina Shamsi, the director of ACLU's National Security Project, said in a statement, "The presence of troops in otherwise beautiful, vibrant American cities erodes a sense of safety and undermines the core freedoms to assemble and voice dissent." I don't know about beautiful, vibrant American cities. The cities got their own problems, right? With their own corrupt governments. The Trump administration has claimed that Portland is war-ravaged by protesters who it says are blocking immigration enforcement measures. Despite the absence of any serious crisis conditions in the city, Trump and his allies have often employed vague allegations of emergency conditions as a pretext for wielding extraordinary powers both at home and abroad. And guess what? Each time, he never has any fucking evidence. No evidence. Demonstrators have worn costumes while protesting outside of immigration facilities, sometimes donning dinosaur and frog outfits and blasting music. Federal agents have faced criticism of using excessive force against peaceful demonstrators. Some of the ICE people licked the frogs and then they got high and they said, "What am I doing with my life?" Given Portland protesters' well-known penchant for wearing chicken suits, inflatable frog costumes, or nothing at all when expressing their disagreement with the methods employed by ICE, observers may be tempted to view the majority's ruling, which accepts the government's characterization of Portland as a war zone, as merely absurd. Judge Susan Graber wrote after casting the dissenting vote on the panel's ruling, "But today's decision is not merely absurd. It erodes our constitutional principles, including sovereign states' control over their state's militias and the people's First Amendment rights to assemble and to object to the government's policies and actions." So he can't send them yet, but these two psycho judges gave him the green light. Come on. So Trump's ICE jacks up weapons spending by 700%, included guided missile war. What the fuck does ICE need with guided missile warheads? What the shit? The $170 billion, $170 billion. That's what? This is 6, 7, 14, 8. That's all. You can almost fix housing, give everybody housing like 9 times. So $170 billion in new funding for immigration enforcement operations that the Republican Party included in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act earlier this year led some to warn that the Trump administration was ramping up spending at anti-immigration agencies, not just to fund its attacks on migrants, but to deploy federal forces against anyone it wanted to across the U.S. communities. New reporting on Monday detailed just how much U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, baby, has spent on weaponry since Trump took office, weapons that have been purchased as the administration has turned federal agents on U.S. cities such as Chicago and Portland. Well, not Portland yet, but that's coming, illustrating how the president is treating increasingly armed ICE officers as his private military, as one progressive critic said. As images spread online of immigration agents deploying pepper spray and tear gas at nonviolent protesters, Judd Legum at Popular Information recently delved into government contracting records that from the Federal Procurement Data System and found that ICE has increased its spending on small arms ordnance and ordnance accessories manufacturing by 700% this year compared to last year's numbers. The agency spent $71.5 million on small arms from January 20th, the day Trump began his second term, through October 18th. The number dwarfs ICE's spending during the first Trump term, during which the agency spent about $8.4 million annually on small arms, and during President Joe Biden's administration. The type of weaponry purchased by ICE also raised alarm Monday, with Legum reporting that while most of the agency's spending was on guns and armor, there have also been significant purchases of chemical weapons and guided missile warheads and explosive components. The reporting comes as ICE and other immigration agencies continue to deploy armed, masked agents in major Democratic-leaning cities where officers have been filmed and photographed pointing a weapon at a protester, firing a pepper ball at a pastor, and pointing a firearm at bystanders who saw one agent arresting a man. A CBS reporter in Chicago also accused an ICE officer of firing a pepper ball at her vehicle, causing the chemical to engulf the inside of her truck. Sally Duvall, a Texas State House candidate in last year's election, said she was curious to know why ICE needs guided missile warheads. That's a good question there, Sally. Why do you need guided missile warheads? The report came days after the Trump administration used the U.S. military for what Democratic California governor and hair model Gavin Newsom called a profoundly absurd show of force that could put Californians directly in harm's way, when the Marines fired 155-millimeter artillery shells over a section of the busy I-5 freeway to celebrate military branch's 250th anniversary, in which shrapnel fell down and hit a CHP car and a bike, a CHP bike too. Shrapnel over the freeway. Newsom accused Trump of using our military to intimidate people he disagrees with, and called the exercise reckless. Melanie Diarigo, executive director of the Campaign for New York Health, said Legum's reporting on Monday showed that ICE was always going to be Trump's private military to deploy domestically against Americans. Legum's analysis, which likely understated total spending on weapons by Trump's deportation forces, as it did not include spending by other anti-immigration agencies, followed a report on ICE's recent funding increase in these times. With the $170 billion included in the OBBBA, reported the outlet, if the immigration enforcement apparatus of the U.S. were its own national military, it would be the 13th most heavily funded in the world. Wow. This puts it higher than the national militaries of Poland, Italy, Australia, Canada, Turkey, and Spain, and just below Israel. The budget, Brandon Lee of the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights told in these times, shows the misplaced priorities of this administration, where they are cutting health care and cutting vital programs for people across the country and putting all of this money into a domestic terrible force. And it shows the cruelty, said Lee, that the Trump administration intends to enact on all people in the United States. I'll buy that for $1, that Trump's using ICE as his personal military because it's part of the Department of Homeland Security. He can do whatever he wants with them, right? He doesn't have to have permission from Congress to do that. So he has his own domestic military that he can use. And, you know, he hasn't even finished a year in office yet, so God knows what he's going to do. Kill your egregores. Hello, happy Tuesday. Hope you're doing well over there across where you're at, having fun in the West Coast there. Are you having tacos over there? I miss California tacos. The trucks, the food trucks. Oh my God! When I lived in Koreatown, they had this food truck right down the street, and I go down to get these big ass burritos for like $4. The meat and the cheese and I know, right? Ice and guided missiles. What could possibly go wrong? Here's another story that'll get you high. This is the thing. Supreme Court will consider whether people who regularly smoke pot can legally own guns. But if you smoke crack, that's totally fine. The Supreme Court said Monday that it will consider whether people who regularly smoke the electric lettuce can legally own guns. The latest firearm case to come before the court since its 2022 decision expanding gun rights. Trump's administration asked the justices to revive a case against a Texas man charged with a felony because he allegedly had a gun in his home and acknowledged being a regular pot smoker. The Justice Department appealed after a lower court largely struck down a law that bars people who use any illegal drugs from having guns. Last year, a jury convicted Hunter Biden, you remember that kid, of violating the law. Among other charges, his father, of course, Sleepy Joe, later pardoned him. Arguments probably will take place in early 2026, with a decision likely by next summer. The Republican administration favors Second Amendment rights, but government attorneys argued that this ban is a justifiable restriction. We don't want them potheads. Pothead would probably eat the gun before, before fucking shoot it. They asked the court to reinstate a case against Ali Daniel Hamani. His lawyers got the felony charge tossed out after the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals found that the blanket ban is unconstitutional under the Supreme Court's expanded view of gun rights. The appellate judges found it could be still used against people accused of being high and armed at the same time, though. I don't know, man. If somebody's got a gun, I would prefer that they were stoned, because they're probably going to be like, I don't want to shoot anybody, bro. I just want a sandwich. Hamani's attorneys argued the broadly written laws puts millions of people at risk of technical violations, since at least 20% of Americans have tried pot, according to government health data. About half of only 20%? Come on. There's got to be more than that. Well, that is like, 66 million people, I think. About half of states legalized recreational marijuana, but it's still illegal under federal law. Just remember that. The Justice Department argues the law is valid when used against regular drug users because they pose a serious public safety risk. The government said the FBI found Hamani's gun and cocaine, there we go, in a search of his home as they probed travel and communications allegedly linked to Iran. The gun, oh, hello. We don't need you there. The gun charge was the only one filed, however, and his lawyer said the other allegations were irrelevant and were mentioned only to make him seem more dangerous. The case marks another flashpoint in the application of the Supreme Court's new test for firearm restrictions. The conservative majority found in 2022 that the Second Amendment generally gives people the right to carry guns in public for self-defense, and any firearm restrictions must have a strong grounding in the nation's history. I don't know, were the founding fathers, they were smoking weed. They were growing weed back then. Or hemp. They were growing hemp. I don't know about actual cannabis, but they were growing hemp. The landmark 2022 ruling led to a cascade of challenges to firearm laws around the country, though the justices have since upheld a different federal law intended to protect civilians of domestic violence by barring guns from people under restraining orders. Okay. Yeah. So if you're a weed head, watch out. You're not going to be able to pew. Or maybe you will. Every time I do this show, I always get like the runny nose. I don't know am I allergic to this? Probably. What we got next? Oh, so I don't know if any of you were affected by the AWS outage, but there were several apps that were. As Amazon's AWS recovering after major outage disrupts app services worldwide. Amazon's cloud services unit, AWS, was recovering on Monday from a widespread outage that knocked out thousands of websites along with some of the world's most popular apps, Snapchat and Reddit, and disrupted businesses globally. Everything was fine here. I don't know what's going on. The turmoil marked the largest internet disruption since last year's CrowdStrike malfunction, hobbled technology systems in hospitals, banks, and airports, and highlights the vulnerability of the world's interconnected technologies, which is all going to be a moot point once a coronal mass ejection from the sun comes and eradicates all the satellites up there. After roughly 3 hours of disruption, systems were gradually coming back online as of 6 a.m. Eastern Time, with AWS saying it was seeing significant signs of recovery for some impacted services. Most requests should now be succeeding. We continue to work through a backlog of queued requests, it said in the latest update on the outage posted on its status page. Or status. You could say it either way. AWS provided on-demand computing power, data storage, and other digital services to companies, governments, and individuals. Disruptions to its servers can cause outages across websites and platforms that rely on its cloud infrastructure. AWS competes with Google and Microsoft's cloud services. Asked for comment on the outage, AWS directed Reuters to its status page. Amazon did not respond to a request for comment. Junadi Ali, a software engineer, cyber expert, and fellow at the Institution of Engineering and Technology, and what a fine fellow he is, said the issue appeared to be with one of the networking systems AWS uses to control a database project. As this issue can usually be resolved centrally unless there are further issues that identify, the issue should be able to be mitigated over the coming hours, he said. Ookla Namak, owner of outage tracking website Down Detector, said over 4 million users reported issues due to the incident. Issues on some apps and websites, including Snapchat, Roblox, streaming site Max, and PayPal's Venmo, were showing signs of easing, according to Down Detector. Snapchat had over 4,000 reports of Down Detector, down from an earlier peak of more than 22,000, while reports on Roblox dropped to less than 500 from a peak of over 12,600. Other services, however, remained affected, with thousands of reports for social media app Reddit and financial platform Chime on Down Detector. AI started Perplexity, cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase, and trading app Robinhood all experienced platform disruptions and attributed them to AWS. Amazon's own services, including its shopping website, Prime Video, and Alexa, were also hit, although Down Detector last showed a decrease in severity. Fortnite, owned by Epic Games, also, along with Clash Royale and Clash of Clans, were among the gaming platforms affected. Uber rival Lyft was also knocked down in the United States. In a post on the Twitter, Signal's president Meredith Whittaker confirmed the messaging app was hit by the outage as well, though billionaire Elon Musk, who owns Twitter, said his platform continued to work. Yeah, I was on Twitter a little bit yesterday. I didn't see any problems. But Twitter has its own set of problems anyway. Okay. You went to the food truck place in Portland. Honestly, the only food I liked at the food truck place is Shizandra berry tea and the beer. I stay away from any food that looks like old grease is used. You might want to stay away from the LA trucks, but it's still good. It's still good. If you like unhealthy food, it's delicious. In Britain, Lloyd Bank, Bank of Scotland, and telecom services provider Vodafone and BT were also facing issues, according to Down Detector's UK website, as was UK Tax, Payments, and Customs Authority HMRC's website. The problem highlights how interconnected everyday digital services have become and how reliant they now are on a small number of global cloud providers, with one glitch causing havoc with business and day-to-day life, experts and academics say. The main reason for this issue is that all these big companies have relied on just one service, said Nishant Sastry, director of research at the University of Surrey's Department of Computer Science. While there has been no indication yet of a potential cyber attack behind Monday's outage, the scale of the disruption has fed speculation. When anything like this happens, the concern is that a cyber incident is understandable, said Rafi Pilling, director of threat intelligence at cybersecurity firm Sophos. AWS has a far-reaching and intricate footprint, so any issue can cause a major upset. And that's the thing. I'm scared of this cloud business. I don't like using the cloud for anything. I like all my shit on my computer, right? I use Google Docs sometimes too. And if Google goes down, they have satellites too. And if for some reason they go down, I got no access to those Google Docs. But I have backups on my own stuff. And I update those as it goes. So I try to avoid that as much as possible. Let's go to the global south and Trump's fuckery there. Trump ends aid to Colombia after President Petro accuses U.S. of murder over boat strikes. So President Trump has issued a statement attacking Colombian President Gustavo Petro after the Latin American leader accused the U.S. of murder for bombing a boat in Colombian waters. On Saturday, Petro said that a U.S. strike on a boat in September killed a Colombian fisherman. U.S. government officials have committed a murder and violated our sovereignty in territorial waters, Petro wrote on X, Twitter X. Fisherman Alejandro Carranza had no ties to the drug trade, and his daily activity was fishing. The Colombian boat was adrift and had its distress signal up due to an engine failure. We await explanations from the U.S. government. Trump administration has offered no evidence to back up its claims about who it's been bombing in the Caribbean. A day after Petro's comments, Trump accused Petro of being a drug dealer and vowed that he would cut aid to Colombia, a longtime close partner and ally of the United States. President Gustavo Petro of Colombia, this is the thing, is an illegal drug dealer, strongly encouraging the massive production of drugs in big and small fields all over Colombia. It has become the biggest business in Colombia by far, and Petro does nothing to stop it, despite large-scale payments and subsidies from the USA that are nothing more than a long-term ripoff of America, Trump wrote on his Truth Social. As of today, these payments or any other form of payment or subsidies will no longer be made to Colombia. Trump added that Petro better close up these killing fields immediately, or the U.S. will close them up for him, and it won't be done nicely. In response to Trump's comments, Colombia withdrew its ambassador from Washington, and Colombian Interior Minister Armando Benedetti said the U.S. president's remarks were a threat of invasion or military action against Colombia. In another post on the tweeters, Petro blamed the cocaine trafficking in Colombia on consumption in the U.S. and said his government had taken a lot of action against the cocaine trade. During the years of my government, when the greatest effort was made against drug traffickers, halting the expansion of coca leaf cultivation, which now only grew by 3% in 2024, and half of the crops for the past 3 years have been abandoned in the jungle, as the UN report states, and we have seized more than 2,800 tons of cocaine as never before in history, Petro said. He has to watch out with that never before stuff, because that's some Trump stuff. It's the biggest in history. We've never seen anything like this. It's big. It's big. It's big. Yeah, it is. It's a mob threat. It sure is. The left-wing leader has previously clashed with Trump about military deportation flights and has been very critical of Israel's genocidal war in Gaza, going as far as calling for an international armed force to stop it. While in New York for the UN General Assembly last month, Petro addressed pro-Palestine protesters and called on U.S. troops to disobey orders from Trump, prompting the Trump administration to revoke his visa. Petro has also rejected the U.S. push toward an attempt at regime change in Venezuela. The Venezuelan people do not want invasions, blockades, or threats against them, no matter who they come from, he said on Monday. Why do you do this? Yeah, so I never thought that we, when we invaded Panama and got what's his name then, we blasted him out of his house with the rock music. You guys remember that? The Panamanian leader. That's the last time I remember all that shit. Hey, Go Start, what's up? Good to see you, buddy, over there on the Rumbly Tumblies. So he's trying to pick a war with the Global South. I hope the Global South kicks his ass, personally. Meanwhile, Rodrigo Paz wins presidential runoff, becoming Bolivia's first conservative leader in decades. So I guess Trump likes this guy. There he is. Rodrigo Paz, from La Paz. I wonder if he's... Rodrigo Paz, a centrist senator, will be... They said he's a... What do you call him? A conservative, and then they call him a centrist, which is basically these days the same thing. Centrist to the end, then to the right. That's why you have some Republicans, Democrats out there. Will be Bolivia's next president. Preliminary results showed on Sunday, paving the way for a major political transformation after almost 20 years of rule by the movement towards socialism party and during the nation's worst economic crisis in decades. The trend is irreversible, Oscar Hassan, the president of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, said of Paz's lead over his rival, former right-wing President Jorge Tuto Quiroga. Paz won 54.5% of the votes early results showed versus Quiroga's 45.5%. Paz and his popular running mate, ex-police captain Edmond Lara, galvanized working class and rural voters outraged over record inflation and an acute dollar shortage that has sapped food and fuel supplies. But for all their disillusionment with the movement towards socialism, or MAS party, Bolivian voters seem skeptical of Quiroga's radical 180-degree turn away from the MAS-style social protections and toward an international monetary fund bailout. Oh, the IMF. I want to stay away from those fucking vampires. A lot of people are wary of Quiroga's shock measures. Paz's appeal is strong in rural areas and among some older voters, the kinds of people who might have supported MAS if it had fielded a real candidate. Fielding a real candidate. That sounds, that as a problem, that sounds familiar, said Gustavo Flores Macias, Dean of the School of Public Policy at the University of Maryland. Oh, that's it? Okay. Yeah, so... You have Milei down in Argentina, and now you have Paz in Bolivia, and we'll see how far that goes. As far as how much, and look, and if he does a good job in Bolivia, I mean, if the people like him, who cares what his affiliation is, as long as he's doing a good job. But I don't know. The skeptic in me always says, nah, fuckery's afoot. You know that. So coming up in our propaganda watch today, the pro-Palestine activists in UK are really getting a raw deal. And now some of the people who are in prison over it are going to be doing a hunger strike. I'm going hungry. I'm going hungry.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish the same things are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Whoop, whoop. Dozens of pro-Palestine activists in prison threaten historic hunger strike. Dozens of activists who are being held on remand for alleged offenses relating to Palestine action activities are threatening to launch a hunger strike over their prison conditions. In a letter to the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmoud, the campaign group Prisoners for Palestine, PFP, issued a series of demands on behalf of the 33 people that are unjustly locked up as a result of taking action to stop the genocide in Palestine. The prisoners include members of the Filton 24, a group of activists arrested in late 2024 in connection with an action targeting an Elbit systems factory in Bristol in August of last year. They also include members of the Bryce Norton 5, who allegedly broke into an RAF airbase and attacked with paint and crowbars 2 planes they said were used for military operations in Gaza and across the Middle East. All have been denied bail, with some spending over a year in custody without a trial on charges including criminal damage and aggravated burglary. Being held without charge, that just seems very in vogue these days. In July, Yvette Cooper, then Home Secretary, banned Palestine Action and designated the Direction Action Group as a terrorist organization. The ban means Palestine Action is akin to the Islamic State or Al-Qaeda in British law, and expressing support or membership of the group is a criminal offense that could lead to a prison sentence of up to 14 years. The UK. Since the proscription, prisoners held in connection with the group have reported worsening treatment and increasing restrictions imposed by prison officers. One prisoner, T. Hoxha, a member of the Filton 24, launched a hunger strike in August at HMP Peterborough after the prison suspended her recreational activities, stopped her working at the library, and withheld her mail. The letter warned Mahmoud, unless their demands are met, the 33 inmates would launch the hunger strike on November 2nd, the anniversary of the 1917 Balfour Declaration, when Britain formally declared its support for establishing a Jewish state in Palestine. Audrey Corno and Francesca Naden, representatives of PFP who were previously imprisoned for their activism, delivered the letter to the Home Office on Monday. If the hunger strike were to go ahead, it would be historic, Corno told Middle East Eye, adding that it would mark the largest coordinated prisoners' hunger strike since the 1981 Irish hunger strike led by Bobby Sands. The prisoners have decided to do this because they've been left with no other choice by their government, Naden told Middle East Eye, adding, Corno added, they have tried to have their demands met through the prison complaint system and judicial system, but they have been consistently let down by both. The demands include an end to all censorship of prisoners, meaning a removal of restrictions on their communications, including personal mail and phone calls. Censorship inside prisons is a tool of control used to punish resistance. Letters, phone calls, political statements, books, and all forms of expression must be respected, the letter reads. Excuse me. Middle East Eye previously reported that prisoners linked to Palestine Action were facing increasing restrictions on their post, phone calls, and visitations in the wake of the group's proscription in July. According to PFP, Filton 24 prisoners have been subject to mail restrictions throughout their incarceration. PFP told Moise Ibrahim, one of the Filton 24 currently held in HMP Lewis, has said his family and friends' contact details wiped off his phone system, meaning he is now unable to contact them. That's fucked up. The letter further demands that prisoners held on remand in connection with Palestine Action are granted immediate bail, arguing that the decision to refuse bail undermines their right to a fair trial. The right to a fair trial must include the right to prepare for it in freedom, not behind bars, he said. The letter also calls for the release of all documents related to our cases in full. This includes all meetings between British and Israeli state officials, the British police, the Attorney General, Elbit Systems representatives, and any others involved in the coordinating of the ongoing witch hunt of actionists and campaigners, the letter read. referencing the Israeli arms firm repeatedly targeted by Palestine action. Middle East Eye previously reported that then Policing Minister Diana Johnson met representatives of an insurance firm targeted by Palestine action weeks before the group's proscription in June of this year. In May, Freedom of Information disclosures emerged suggesting the UK had shared contact details of counterterrorism police with the Israeli embassy during the ongoing investigations into Palestine action activists. Corno and Naden said they expected wider support from other prisoners for the strike. I spent some time earlier this year in HMP Bronzefield alongside some of the Filton 24, and I can speak from experience and say that many of the prisoners inside are very on board and understand why we've taken action and support Palestine and support the actionists, Corno said. Middle East Eye has asked the Ministry of Justice, HM Prison and Probation Service, and the office for comment, but of course they said, nah, we ain't telling you nothing. More than 11,000 signed a letter to a judge over sentencing of an NYC student protester. More than 11,000 people have signed a letter addressed to a U.S. judge in support of a Palestinian-American student who is set to be sentenced next week over, quote, hate crimes. Signatories have asked U.S. District Judge Richard M. Berman to grant leniency to City University of New York, that's CUNY if you're local there, student Tarek Bazrouk, and allow him to complete his sentence under supervised release rather than serving additional jail time. Tarek is a young man who has faced deep personal trauma throughout his 20 years of life, the letter said. At the time of his sentencing, he will have spent nearly 6 months inside the Metropolitan Detention Center, a notoriously violent facility with inhumane conditions. Supporters of Bazrouk said that, oh, that was interesting. Something went flash. Supporters of Bazrouk said that a lengthy sentence would cause more trauma and harm. Tariq, like many other young men in the criminal justice system, would be immeasurably harmed and further traumatized by a lengthy sentence in federal prison. We believe that restorative justice will be achieved through Tariq's personal growth and evolution as a man and valued community leader, not through a prison sentence. Bazrouk is facing a maximum sentence of 5 years imprisonment and a fine of $250,000. He pleaded guilty to one count of federal hate crime charges during a status hearing on Wednesday. The letter says that if Bazrouk were to be released, collective community support will ensure that he would work towards completing his bachelor's degree and that he would abide by all probation and or community control guidelines and enroll in any and all counseling as suggested by the court. Bazrouk was arrested by the FBI in May on hate crime charges and tried in a New York court in June for physically assaulting pro-Israel Jewish protesters on 3 separate occasions between 2024 and 2025. Bazrouk was accused of assaulting 3 people, 2 of whom were students, in April 2024, December 2024, and January this year. In May, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York said in a press release that the Civil Rights Division will continue to relentlessly pursue allegations of anti-Semitic violence and will not stop until justice is served for the victims and their families. Under Attorney General Pam Bondi, was it Pam Bimbo? Isn't that what Willie called her, Pam Bimbo? Pam Bimbo's leadership, we will use all available resources to investigate and charge those who target and assault others because of their faith. I'm sure that wasn't the case. Hence the propaganda. Nearly half of Democrats in competitive primary districts say they could never support a candidate backed by AIPAC. I was watching something yesterday that I think it was on Kevin's show. Yeah, it was. And he was talking to some guy. They said, yeah, I'm not taking AIPAC money, but, I still support Israel. I think they have a right to defend themselves. Fucking losers. As voters sour on Israel after 2 years of genocide in Gaza, an internal poll suggests that backing from the pro-Israel lobby may be a liability for Democrats seeking to win their primaries. The Democratic polling firm Upswing Strategies canvassed 850 Democratic voters in congressional districts across Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. The survey asked voters for some of the most competitive Democratic primaries in the 2026 election cycle, as a number of questions about their sympathies in the Israel-Palestine conflict. It also zeroed in on their feelings about pro-Israel lobbying groups, including AIPAC, which supported 152 Democrats who received more than $28 million in total during the 2024 election and had a role in toppling several House progressives, including then Representatives Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. See, Cori Bush was too worried about dancing instead of helping people getting booted out, and Jamal Bowman's pulling fire alarms. Clown show. Noriega, that's who it was. Thank you. Manuel Noriega in Panama. That'd be funny if they actually blasted Van Halen's Panama to get him out of that embassy or wherever he was. He was holed up somewhere, and the U.S. military had him surrounded, and they were just blasting rock music, and he couldn't stand any of them. Maybe they rickrolled him. The poll found that nearly half of voters in these competitive districts, 48%, agreed with the statement that they could never support a candidate for Congress that was funded by AIPAC or the pro-Israel lobby more generally. Over a quarter of voters, 28%, said they strongly felt that they could never support a candidate backed by AIPAC. Just 40% said they could see themselves supporting a candidate backed by AIPAC, especially if I agreed with them on most other issues. I guess genocide's not a deal breaker. But just 10% expressed that belief strongly, while the other 30% said they only agreed with it somewhat. The poll was posted to social media by Matthew Eady, a reporter for the Illinois news outlet Evanston Now on Saturday. He said that since it was conducted in early September, its results have been circulating among Democrats in over a half dozen competitive primaries in mostly Illinois. With Democratic Senator Dick Durbin's seat coming open in 2026, thank God, they'll just replace him with another Dick Durbin type. Several current Illinois congresspeople have signaled their intent to run, leaving their own House seats up for grabs. Among them are some AIPAC favorites, including Representative Raja Krishnamurthy, who received over $63,000 from pro-Israel groups during the 2023-2024 election cycle, and nearly $269,000 since his first campaign in 2016. And Representative Robin Kelly, who received over $17,000 last cycle and nearly $109,000 since her first campaign in 2012. Okay. Pro-Israel groups will also likely seek to hold off yet another primary challenge to Representative Danny Davis from the progressive community organizer Keena Collins, who has run against him during the last three cycles. During the 2024 election, an AIPAC affiliate, the United Democracy Project, these burps, especially spent approximately $500,000 running ads against attacking Collins, who had described Israel's actions against Palestinians, including the blockade of food and water supplies, as war crimes. Representative Delia Ramirez, a progressive who has referred to Israel's actions as a genocide and sponsored a bill to halt military aid to the nation, was targeted with more than $157,000 worth of digital ads and mailers in 2022 by the AIPAC-allied Democratic Majority for Israel. However, in 2024, while blitzing other races, the groups held off on targeting Ramirez, whose support was deemed to be too strong. Yeah, Temple of the Dog, baby. I'm going hungry. I'm going hungry. Stephanie, are you catching up? Are you putting this on like 1.5 speed so you can catch up? It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's cool. Other districts in the survey included that of Representative Ilhan Omar out of Minnesota, who has weathered multiple challenges from AIPAC, which likewise held off in 2024 due to her popularity, although she still supports the right to exist. On the flip side, it also included the district of one of Israel's strongest soldiers, the self-described centrist Representative Haley Stevens, a Democrat of Pennsylvania, whom AIPAC and other pro-Israel groups armed with more than $5.4 million last year to take down the progressive Jewish incumbent Representative Andy Levin, whom AIPAC's former president called the most corrosive member of Congress to the U.S.-Israel relationship. While the polls results were not broken down by congressional districts, they do show that in a political era defined by the Gaza genocide, the Israel lobby's influence within the party may be on the wane. Last week, Representative Seth Moulton, Massachusetts, a centrist challenger to the progressive Senator Ed Markey, seemed to exemplify this when he pledged to return the money he'd received from AIPAC, saying, "I'm a friend of Israel, but not of its current government, and AIPAC's mission is to back the government." That's the asshole. Yeah, he said, I'm giving the money back, but I still like Israel. Please don't murder me like Charlie Kirk. Wait, what? Let's see. The wane is partially due to the collapse of support for Israel among Democrats over the past 2 years. Affirming what past polls have shown, the upswing poll found that Democratic voters overwhelmingly have a widely positive view of not only Palestine, but international organizations that have shown support to Palestinians like the United Nations and Doctors Without Borders, while having overwhelmingly negative views of Israel and especially its evil tyrant leader, the Lord Satan. And while it was less salient to voters than holding President Donald Trump accountable and lowering the cost of living, 53% of voters in the poll said putting pressure on the Israeli government to end the humanitarian crisis in Gaza was a 10 out of 10 issue on the scale of importance for Democrats to focus on, while 72% said it was at least an 8 out of 10. Peter Beinart, the editor-at-large for the progressive magazine Jewish Current, said, "It's astonishing how quickly the politics are moving." Democratic politicians, he continued, now don't fear AIPAC. They fear being associated with AIPAC. The political rules of the last almost half century are changing before our eyes. Well, you'd like to think so, but all talk and no action. Let's hear something. So, Department of Justice whistleblower details being ordered to lie in court about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. A former U.S. Department of Justice lawyer on Sunday described how an appointee of Trumpy told him to lie about Kilmar Abrego Garcia's supposed ties to the gang MS-13 after he was wrongfully deported to El Salvador earlier this year. During an interview with CBS News 60 Minutes, whistleblower Erez Ruveni said that he was told by a supporter at the DOJ to argue in court against bringing Abrego Garcia back to the U.S. on the grounds that he was an MS-13 member and a terrorist. Ruveni said that he refused to sign on to the strategy because the claims being made about Abrego Garcia were flatly untrue. That's not correct, he said of the claims. That is not factually correct. It is not legally correct. That is a lie, and I cannot sign my name to that belief. Ruveni went on to say that even if Abrego Garcia had been a gang member, his right to due process was still being violated by the Trump Department of Justice. What matters here is that they did everything they did to him in violation of his due process rights, he said. What's to stop them if they decide they don't like you anymore, to say you're a criminal, you're a member of MS-13, you're a terrorist? What's to stop them from sending in some DOJ attorney at the direction of DOJ leadership to delay, to filibuster, and if necessary, to lie? Ruveni also discussed how Trump DOJ had defied court orders by rushing to send a plane full of purportedly undocumented immigrants to be detained in El Salvador's Terrorism Confinement Center, that's CCOT, a facility that for years has drawn criticism for alleged systematic human rights abuses. Yeah, it's the Abu Ghraib of El Salvador. Specifically, he said that former Trump DOJ official Emil Bove, who was confirmed to a lifetime seat as a federal judge earlier this year, even after Ruveni first spoke out against him, said during a meeting in February that the department was not to let anything interfere with the planes that were transporting the immigrants to El Salvador, even if it meant defying direct court orders. The very next day, government lawyer Drew Ensign, who had been at that meeting, told Judge James Boasberg in court that he had no idea whether the government was planning imminently to fly the planes out of the country. Ruveni said this shocked him because it was impossible to believe that Ensign sincerely had no idea that the government was planning to fly the planes out that very day. It is the highest, most egregious violation of a lawyer's code of ethics to mislead a court with intent, Ruveni emphasized. We really did tell the court, screw you. We really did just tell the courts, we don't care about your order. You can't tell us what to do. That was just a real gut punch. 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley noted during the interview that while Ruveni previously spoke out about Bove's directive to disregard court orders, the interview on Sunday marked the first time since then that the former DOJ lawyer had broadcast his allegations in a TV appearance. Ruveni acknowledged that the interview brought up safety concerns for him and his family. At the same time, I think about what we're losing in this moment. I think that about why I went to the Department of Justice to do justice. I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, he said. I would not be faithfully abiding by my oath if I stayed silent right now. Abrego Garcia was detained in El Salvador for 2 months, with the Trump administration repeatedly claiming it had no way to return him to the U.S. before he was finally transferred to the U.S., where he is facing human smuggling charges. He was transferred to a detention facility in Pennsylvania last month, and the Trump administration is still seeking to deport him. He pleaded not guilty to the charges. So, yeah, of course, we know there was fuckery afoot behind the scenes with this and any of those deportations they were sending down to CCOT in El Salvador. Millions turned out for No Kings. Protests against Trump tyranny, mostly for virtue signaling. So, yeah, over the weekend, democracy defenders took to the streets Saturday in big cities and small towns from coast to coast and around the world to protest Trump's authoritarianism and to show the world that America has no kings and the power belongs to the people. Even though we are an oligarchy, we're not. We don't have kings. Organizers said that more than 2,700 No Kings rallies were scheduled in every state and more than a dozen nations in what could be the largest protest in U.S. history in one day. Saturday's demonstrations followed June 14th's No Kings protest that drew millions of people. I think that this is going to be a stronger push than the last one. Hunter Dunn, 50501, a progressive organization that is one of the event's organizers, told The Times, I'm seeing more of an emphasis on the understanding that this is not just a sprint, he added. We are seeing a difference in the understanding of the general public and that this is a marathon. Bernie Sanders headlined a massive rally in D.C. Mike Johnson, the Republican Speaker of the House, called these rallies... Oh, wait a minute, I got to do the right. Mike Johnson, the Republican Speaker of the House, called these rallies Hate America events. Sanders told a huge crowd in Washington, D.C. Why does he have it wrong? Millions of Americans are coming out today not because they hate America. We're here today because we love America. Vote Quimby. Today, in this dangerous moment in American history, our message is no, President Trump, we don't want you or any other king to rule us. Sanders continued, we will not move towards authoritarianism in America. We, the people, will rule. And then he bowed out twice, the presidential thing. Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, also spoke at the D.C. rally, telling the crowd that the truth is that Trump is the most corrupt president in the history of the United States of America, and that is really saying something. There have been some corrupt motherfuckers. The truth is that he is enacting a detailed step-by-step plan to try to destroy all the things that protect our democracy: free speech, fair elections, an independent press, the right to protest. Murphy continued, but the truth is also this: he is not won yet. The people still rule in this country, the senator added. And today, all across America, in numbers that may eclipse any day of protest in our nation's history, Americans are saying loudly and proudly that we are virtue signaling. That we are free people. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal fired up an enthusiastic crowd in Seattle, affirming that we will not back down, we will not give in to Trump's authoritarianism and lawlessness. I'm trying to go through this is all just rhetoric. Let me get to the thing. Saturday's rallies were peaceful, joyous events replete with signs inscribed with creative slogans like "Our huddled masses will defeat your fascist asses." That's funny. And "No crown for the clown." What's this say? We wanted huddled masses, not hooded asses. What did this say? Oh, that's another sign, I guess. In Chicago, rallygoers erected a papier-mâché guillotine in Grant Park where Black Sabbath's War Pigs blared from loudspeakers. No sign is big enough to list all the reasons I'm here, 26-year-old protester Michaela Riley told the Chicago Sun-Times. With everything going on in Chicago, we have to protest. We have to protect immigrants, and we have to stand up against Trump. We can't normalize this type of polarization and this type of partisanship. And so, yeah, it's this. Oh, shit, I knew it was going to do that. God damn it. Let's see. Oh, we could do this then. So, yeah, this was in Chicago over the weekend. And a lot of people out. But unfortunately, hang on a second. I have to do something here real quick. All right. Okay, let me get back there. Sorry about that. Wasn't expecting that to go to the next thing. In Nashville, 9-year-old Iris Spraggins, who was attending a rally with her parents, told the Tennessee Lookout that she wished country music icon Dolly Parton were president. We don't want Trump to be king because he can be mean to a lot of immigrants and he kicks out a lot of immigrants, Spraggins said. There's Nashville, Pueblo, Colorado. And this is just basically people talking about these events in Bangor, Maine. Progressive congressional candidate Matt Dunlap told the crowd, "A dangerous time is again upon us." Like everything just started in 2016 or started this year. Atlanta, what is this? This is San Diego right here. We have the right to free speech, we have the right to free press, and we have the right to have our families not be separated in the dark of night and dragged away. Where was this energy when Biden was president, right? That's the thing. That's why I don't take stock in any of these no kings bullshit things. These are just, this is just virtue signaling. If you're doing a protest on a Saturday because it's convenient, it's a parade. It's not a protest. Yes, it's nice to see millions of people out, but what are they being told to get them out there, right? Trump bad, Trump bad. Yes, Trump's bad, but Trump's not the only one who's bad. People have to have a significant knowledge of the underlying problems that America has, and it's not just Trump. He's just a symptom of those things. A mocking Bernie imitation is the only way worth listening. Yes, I am a cuck. I am straight up a cuck. And if that's not bad enough, U.S. counterintelligence agents get enhanced arrest powers. What does that mean? So civilian special agents of the U.S. Army Counterintelligence Command will receive enhanced authorities to conduct searches, execute warrants, and make arrests outside of military bases. Army counterintelligence leaders announced to members of the media during an October 15th roundtable at the Association of the United States Army's annual conference in D.C. Title 10 U.S. Code Section 7377, written into the National Defense Authorization Act, that's the NDAA of 2025, will give the Army civilian CI agents authorities that now correspond with civilian law enforcement agencies to conduct law enforcement activities outside of military installations. Lieutenant General Anthony Hale, Deputy Chief of Staff of the Army for Intelligence, told reporters, "The Department of Defense is implementing guidance for these authorities must be approved by the Attorney General," which it probably will be. "I expect that authority to come from the Attorney General by the end of the year in the calendar year." Hale said Army CI agents are tasked with ferreting out espionage by foreign adversaries and regularly work with federal and local law enforcement agencies nationwide to combat threats to national security. Their jurisdiction is limited to counterintelligence and national security investigations, including countering international terrorism. In addition to allowing special agents within Army counterintelligence to pursue leads off bases, The new authorities will also facilitate their ability to support other law enforcement agencies. The authorities provided to Army counterintelligence special agents allow them to support other law enforcement agencies for the investigation of federal offenses as determined by Department of Defense regulations and agreements with other law enforcement agencies, an ACIC spokesperson told Military Times. The issue of whether or not ACIC special agents will be deputized is decided on the basis of the missions and authority of the agency they may be supporting, the spokesperson said. Army CI agents were formerly unable to conduct searches, execute warrants, or make arrests outside of military installations, owing to legal challenges due to the Army's limited jurisdiction within the U.S. and the nature of their investigations. This has raised hurdles for CI in terms of being able to stop potential foreign spies from doing damage, according to Hale. Most of the personnel that are under investigation live off of the installation, he explained. Having to rely on external law enforcement agencies to invest them with necessary authorities created a backlog of cases and hampered CI agents from pursuing leads into potential acts of espionage. A lot of the cases that we have right now may not gain the interest of a law enforcement agency because we haven't found the critical information that we need to make this a larger case, he noted. He added that the new authorities will give CI agents to seize devices and run forensics to further their investigations. Even with the newly enhanced authorities, ACIC will continue to coordinate with the FBI and other law enforcement entities as applicable for counterintelligence investigations, an ACIC spokesperson told Military Times. In fact, approximately 65% of ACIC investigations are conducted jointly with the FBI because of the concurrent jurisdiction of both agencies. Okay, there's not much here. Here we go. Hale told Military Times that transnational criminal organizations represent a threat to be aware of, particularly with a large number of soldiers currently at the southern border. If you are impacting their livelihood, then you are a threat to them, the transnational criminal organization said, Hale. So if you are causing them to make less money, if you are causing them to not be able to push humans across the border, if you're causing them to not receive weapons from a criminal organization or whatever the merchandise or goods that they're moving, then I would submit to you that you have a threat from the TCO. Additionally, Hale announced that Army CI agents are currently working along the southern border in support of Task Force Southern Border and U.S. Northcom. He also disclosed that Northcom has requested Army counterintelligence support. The adversaries collecting on us every day, no matter where we are, Hale said. You name an adversary, they're out there collaborating. Our job from the Army's perspective, from the Army Counterintelligence Command's perspective, is to engage with and thwart the adversary every day, to be out there on the front lines. Over 3,000 Army CI agents worked round the clock to safeguard national security interests from threats and are in a constant battle against clever adversaries, he stated. It can be a very scary story when you talk about counterintelligence and what the adversary's capabilities are, but I can submit to you, being the operational commander of this organization right here, that I'd put this team up against any of our adversaries and we'd be able to get after them. Right. That's what you want to do. You want to give the military more power on your own soil, right? So, Canada, you remember the Canadian Parliament was applauding the Azov Nazi dudes, or some dude, he was a Nazi. I can't remember the guy's name. Well, Canadian Embassy hosted Ukraine's Azov Brigade this summer. What? Canada's embassy in Kiev, Ukraine, hosted a meeting with personnel affiliated with the infamous Azov Brigade this summer. Documents obtained by the Maple reveal. That's what this is, the Maple. The Canadian military has for years claimed it will not support Azov or any of its affiliates due to their far-right ideology and neo-Nazi links, but The documents show Azov members met with the Canadian Defense Attaché in late July for what one Azov contact called a friendly and open dialogue. You want friendly and open dialogue with Nazis, right? What? Global Affairs Canada, GAC, which released the documents requested by the Maple through an access to information request, censored details about what was discussed during the meeting. Despite releasing the documents, the GAC refused to answer questions from the Maple about the meeting, deferring all questions to the Department of National Defense, that's the DND, which initially deferred to GAC, did not respond to the Maple's questions by publication time. The Maple requested any correspondence regarding meetings or requests for meetings at the Canadian Embassy from the Azov Brigade or any of its affiliated organizations. The released documents show that on July 20th, an Azov contact wrote to the Canadian ambassador to Ukraine, Natalka Kamak, requesting a meeting with the appropriate Canadian military and commercial attachés or counselors. GAC censored other information in the email, including the name and rank of the Azov contact, which Azov formation the contact belonged to. Days later, Canada's defense attaché in Ukraine at the time, Brigadier General Sergei Menard, replied that Simak was out of the country, but that she asked Menard to follow up with the Azov contact on her behalf. It would be a pleasure to organize a meeting this week if it works with you, Menard wrote, before offering some meeting slots between July 29th and July 31st. Please let me know if any of those timings would work for you, and it would be a pleasure to greet you at the Canadian Embassy. The Azov contact wrote back, "Thank you very much for your answer and for your invitation to the embassy," before suggesting they meet on the 31st and asking for information about dress codes. "We usually work in civilian business, casual, military-style attire, or we can wear our uniforms," the contact wrote. "We do have our swastikas freshly pressed and ready to go." GAC censored what appears to be a meeting agenda proposed by the Azov contact. The follow-up document indicates a meeting time was accepted with Deputy Attaché Kevin Pauley and Andrea Laine also named as required attendees. Hours after the meeting took place, the Azov contact wrote, "Thanks you once again for hosting us. You hosted us with your colleagues, Miss Andrea Laine and Major Kevin Pauley." GAC censored almost all of what appears to be a summary of the points that were discussed during the meeting. Why would they do that? I wonder why. The Azov contact described the meeting as a friendly and open dialogue. DND and the Canadian Armed Forces have for years claimed they will not support Azov or any of its affiliated entities because of Azov's far-right ideology and neo-Nazi links. Last year, the Maple obtained documents showing that DND's NATO directorate warned that Azov members continued to be far-right fanatics despite their integration into the Ukrainian National Guard. Azov Brigade was originally formed as a battalion in 2014 by neo-Nazi gang members to combat pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. After it was integrated into Ukraine's National Guard the same year, it was renamed Azov Regiment. It was then expanded as a brigade in February 2023 in the midst of Russia's ongoing invasion. In 2024, when the Biden administration in the U.S. announced it had lifted a 6-year-old ban on military transfers to Azov, DND told the Maple it would not follow suit. It was not clear if DND's statements applied to the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, which was formed in 2023 as part of the Ukrainian Armed Forces and is commanded by Azov founder Andriy Beletsky, who was also the leader of the far-right National Corps Party. In a 2023 interview, Beletsky said there is no division in the wider Azov movement despite the separate formation of the 3rd Assault Brigade. Until April of this year, Azov Brigade was commanded by Denis Prokopenko, a veteran of the original Azov Battalion and a former member of the White Boys Club Football Ultras, the White Boys Club. Prokopenko became head of the newly formed Azov Corps this year, as noted in the Maple's previous reporting, and despite some of Azov's defenders claiming it was long ago de-radicalized, extensive research has pointed to Azov members' continued use of neo-Nazi insignia and their ongoing ties to far-right political leaders. Ivan Kachanovsky, a political studies professor at the University of Ottawa, told the Maple that he is not surprised the Canadian embassy hosted a meeting with Azov because it follows a policy of Western countries whitewashing and using Ukrainian neo-Nazis in a proxy war against Russia. This is quite a deliberate policy, he said, adding that claims about Azov's supposed de-radicalization are not supported by evidence. Despite DND's repeated denials, past reporting has cast doubts on the Canadian military's claims it won't support Azov. In 2021, the Ottawa Citizen's David Puglisi found that Canadian officers who were reported to have been briefed by Azov members in 2018 did not denounce the unit, but instead feared journalists would reveal the meetings took place. Yes, I imagine they would. In April 2022, Radio Canada reported on further evidence showing that the CAF had trained members of Ukraine's military who were reported to be members of far-right groups, including Azov, as recently as 2020. Photographs posted to social media in February 2023 appeared to show Azov recruits training with Canadian-made rifles and optics. It remains unclear, however, who supplied Azov with the weapons. The Azov Brigade website lists the Canadian Colt C7s and Colt C8 assault rifles as being among its key types of armament. This week, Defense Minister David McGuinty announced a new military aid for Ukraine, including $12 million towards bolstering drone capabilities, $30 million in winter gear, and donations of surplus CAF equipment, including missile components, rocket launchers, and M113 armored personnel carriers. DND said Canada has committed a total of $6.5 billion in military aid to Ukraine since Russia's invasion began February 2022. The Canadian embassy in Ukraine has previously served as a venue in Ukraine's political conflicts. In 2014, the building provided shelter for anti-government protesters during the Maidan uprising, which ultimately toppled the presidency of Viktor Yanukovych. Western countries covertly supported the violent overthrow of the Ukrainian government by far-right and oligarchic elements of the Maidan opposition leadership and organizations like the Right Sector, which then included the predecessors of Azov, Patriots of Ukraine, and the Social National Assembly, said Kachanovsky. The Maidan uprising was followed by years of upheaval and preceded the war with pro-Russian separatists in the Donbass region, which borders Russia. After Russia invaded Ukraine, Canadian embassy staff fled into neighboring Poland. The Canadian embassy officially reopened in May 2022, though Global News reported months later that the building remained shuttered. Neo-Nazi symbols and ideology among Ukrainian fighters have continued to be a source of embarrassment for governments backing Ukraine's war effort and some of the media outlets who report it. In a recent broadcast, CBC's The National spoke to a member of the 3rd Assault Brigade in Kiev. The unit's recruits were shown training to fight in what CBC called a shadow war against Russian recruited saboteurs operating inside Ukraine. The shadow war also includes saboteurs and assassins reportedly sponsored by the Base, an American-born international neo-Nazi outfit whose leadership is believed to be based in Russia and which claims it seeks to exploit the chaos in war-torn Ukraine in order to establish a white ethno-state. Alleged former members of the Base have claimed the organization's leader is a Russian spy, The Guardian reported in April, but the CBC broadcast inadvertently reminded viewers that Nazi symbolism and ideology also remain prevalent on the Ukrainian side. CBC's Ben Makuch interviewed an unnamed 3rd Assault Brigade trainer with a Nazi swastika tattoo on his right arm. After this was pointed out on the Twitters, CBC blurred the tattoo in the video initially without any explanation. Why you want to do that, CBC? See, now you cannot see that thing because they blurred it out. See what I did there with the After the Maple contacted the CBC on October 10th, the broadcaster's head of public affairs, Chuck Thompson, wrote, "As soon as we became aware of the offensive tattoo after broadcast, we blurred it." Yeah, they blurred it. They blurred it because it was offensive. They blurred it because them bitches got caught. "We have updated the description of the video to explain the change." Asked if the decision, so blur the thing and not actually question why you're talking to Nazis. Asked if the decision to censor the tattoo is made due to any concerns about embarrassing the Ukrainian military, Thompson wrote, "The answer is no." Kachanovsky said he estimates that neo-Nazi organizations now control around 5% of the entire Ukrainian military. They have much bigger influence compared to their 5% control over the Ukrainian armed forces, said Kachanovsky. Azov, in particular, he said, benefits from regular whitewashing in Ukraine and Western media, which regularly dismiss or deny the unit's neo-Nazis' ties. The power of Azov relies on their ideological motivation, Kachanovsky said. So, Canadians, well, at least in the government, embracing the Nazis, right? And finally, where's that at? Okay. And finally, we're promoting a show for October 29th. And this is going to be kind of a little bit of a deal here. Some of my audience are also audience members of Hardlands Media, right? And if you've been paying attention to Hardlands Media over the past almost year, they've been putting out videos, putting out misinformation about Chicago Corner. Well, coming up on the 29th, we're going to have a special episode of ExtraBulla Live with members of Chicago Corner, former members, and of course, friends of Chicago Corner. We're going to be discussing and debunking all the misinformation that Hardlands Media has been putting out against Chicago Corner. And if you want to hear the truth, you want to really know what's going on, you want some context, you want something with actual facts, backed up by documents that support what we're saying, feel free to join us. It'll be on these channels. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on Rumble and also on Facebook. That's going to be October 29th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on those channels. We just want to set the record straight. There's been nobody in this space that has been willing, at least any of the larger channels, that have been willing to have any member of Chicago Corner on to tell their side of the story. Meanwhile, the guys at Hardlands Media have been all over the place and have not been pressed at all about the information that they've been sharing, which is highly suspect at the very, very least, and flat out lies. So we're going to be debunking those lies. We're going to show you court documents, and we're going to take a really deep dive on this and make sure that you understand the other side of this story. Now, you may be saying, oh, well, you're just attacking Hardlands. No, we're not. No, that's not what this is about. This is not about that at all. This is about setting the record straight. And I believe our friends deserve to be heard. And I would really appreciate it if you could be there for that show and listen and have an open mind and take in that information. Do with it what you will, but at least listen and take in the information. Thank you, Laine. Of course, Laine is going to be there too. And we've got some, and sharing disinformation about those who are not part of Chicago Corner too. So, like I said, this is not some, like, we're not doing this for clicks or like trying to, yell and scream and call people names and stuff. We're going to be very calm. We're going to be very professional. We're going to provide you with the information. You take that information as you will, but you need to know, because Hardlands Media is fundraising off of these lies. They're taking your money off of these lies. And why do I care? Like I said, part of their audience watches this show, and I care about my audience, and I don't want to see my audience get scammed. All right. And we'll tell you how they're getting scammed. So I've already spoken to 2 people on the sidelines who had no idea about this stuff. And they were very shocked once I showed them all the legal documents regarding it, because that's the thing. Hardlands Media, they don't give you links to like legal documents so you can look for it. They want you to take their word for it. And what do I always tell you? Use your critical thinking skills. Don't just believe people. get the proof. And we're going to provide proof for you. So hopefully you'll be there for that. And hopefully you will join our buddy Kevin for Black Bear News this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern. I always get these times wrong. And if you can help him with his GoFundMe, he lost his house in the LA fires. So he could use all the help you get. And our buddy, we've got our buddy Cowboy Kitty, his link's down below for his sister-in-law who's being screwed over by ICE and has legal fees. And of course, our buddy Chanda, who's fighting cancer. And, she needs our help too. So I'll say this on a personal note. If you're going to donate to somebody, donate to those people who really need it. Don't donate to these clowns. What's up, Mystery? Good to see you. Finger man, finger man, finger man. What's up? Like I said, we're just going to provide you the information. You take it, do with it as you will. But that's two goals of this show. One is to clear Chicago Corner's name with actual facts, and two, to help protect you from getting scammed. All right? Ain't nobody got money in this space. And the last thing you want to do is throw it at some motherfuckers who are trying to do something else with it. Yeah, they have court costs, but there's so much more. There is so much more you do not know about this case, and nobody is willing to tell the other side of this story. None of these big channels in this space are doing that. Why? Because they're all in collusion together. They all make money together. And I'm just fucking sick of it. I've been sick of these bullshit videos all year that they've been putting out, chock full of lies. And I know some of you might be saying, well, why didn't you respond then? We've collected enough information now to where we have a solid show to provide so much information to you now. At the time, it was kind of trickling in, but now we have so much, and we'll update you on the situations with all the legal the legal cases that's going on as well. So, and like I said, I'm not. You want to watch that show? Please watch it and share it. If you don't want to donate to the show, I'm not doing this for clicks. I'm not doing this for likes or to get my channel high, try and make my channel bigger off of some bigger channel. I'm not doing that shit. I never have, and I never will. I love each and every one of you. I want to protect you as much as I can. You need to know this information. That's going to be coming up a week from tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. So thank you. Finally, let's get back to some fun news. Let's get out of here on a high note, on a fun note. All right. It is Rocktober. I don't have the Rocktober thing for this. That's for the other show. But it is Rocktober, and it's all kinds of fun stuff for Halloween that's going on. I don't know what you do for Halloween. I like to stay out of the mix. Actually, for our Halloween here, or for me, on Halloween night, we're going to be showing Night of the Living Dead. Please come out for that. If you don't have any Halloween plans, it is on a Friday night. You may be going to parties or something. You can watch it afterwards. It's fine. But if you ain't got nothing to do, you don't want to get out in the crazy, come watch it with us. So Oregon, did I say that? Oregano? What happened? Giant floating pumpkin races draw large crowds to annual event in Oregon. I thought that was Lucky Charms for a second. I'm like, what the hell? Look at these big ass pumpkin boats. Damn it. Why is this racist box in there? Hoisting his kayak paddle in the air triumphantly, Gary Christensen celebrated as he crossed the finish line victorious in his giant floating pumpkin. No, he was not stoned. He wasn't asleep. This actually happened. Dressed up as the character Buddy from Will Ferrell's Hollywood holiday movie Elf. See, it's Elf, right? It's not Lucky Charms. Christensen won the first race in the annual event over the weekend in in Oregon. I butchered so many names today. I'm done with it. The Portland suburb has hosted the West Coast Giant Pumpkin Regatta since 2004, drawing large crowds who cheer on costume participants as they race around a small human-made lake in humongous pumpkins that have been carved out, allowing them to float. And these are some big-ass pumpkins, too. You've got an exciting activity that crowds love. You got the costumes, cheering people, spectacle, pumpkin sinking. Oh, no. It has everything, Christensen said after emerging victorious in the first race of Sunday's event in a 936-pound pumpkin. Jesus Christ. For Christensen, who has competed in the regatta since 2013, the activity has become much more than a once-annual affair. Earlier this year, he claimed a Guinness World Record for longest journey by pumpkin boat after paddling some 58 miles on the Columbia River, breaking the record he had set the previous year. That's some big-ass pumpkins, y'all. You know what I'm saying? Uh-oh. They're out of their gourds using pumpkins for photos. I see what you did there. Yeah, see what you did there. Oh, sorry. Did I put that up? I meant to put that up. I didn't think so. Thanks for the $5 too, Laine. That's very sweet of you. Let me get rid of that. So, yeah. As far as next week, please come watch that. We want you to have both sides of that story. And like we said, we're going to do it in a very professional way. We'll have plenty of information links for you if you have questions. You can ask questions in the chat too if you do have questions. Just keep it civil. I'm sure maybe some trolls are going to show up, but we have so many blue people. You see this. You see all my Smurfs. Ain't no trolls going to be starting no shit. They better not, because they're going to get ousted. Coming up tomorrow, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time. Come watch the Undercurrent with me and Laine P. We've got some good stuff talking about how communities are dealing with these ICE invasions. And that's the thing. That's what you got to do. Communities have to band together and protect their communities against these invasions from these people. So that's tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time. YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and Instagram too, if you're into that sort of thing. Yes, Lainey says, please ask questions. I will welcome all questions asked in good faith. Lainey, being a former host of Chicago Corner back in the day, and of course she was a host of Civically Minded on Heartlands Media, she has a wealth of knowledge. And I would highly suggest listening to her about that. So good lady, good knowledge, and good people too. They've been just mean-mouthed and just lied about and demonized. And it's time to put that shit to bed and finally end this bullshit that's going on with them. So much love to my Chicago Corner peeps. I got your back. Woof, woof. You know what that means. Yeah, so I'll see you tomorrow with Lainey. Have a good day, everybody, and try not to get in any large pumpkins and float around. As fun as that sounds, I don't think that's nautically safe. So, and I care about your safety. So we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
This is City Alpha 5. Woo!